right, nice.
I will call to order a regular meeting of the Dayton City Council, December 10th. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I need a motion and a second for the agenda.
I'll second.
And then discussion.
Yep, I'd have one item, Mayor and Council, I'd like to add one item I-1 to the consent agenda item, the approval of the community event specialist position to Elizabeth Decker. Thank you very much.
And you wanted that in consent.
Well, that would be fantastic, we can.
Any other changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Consent is passed 5-0. We'll move on to consent. I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
Anybody else?
Go ahead, fire away.
Sure. I got a question on item B, and it's on page 10 of our packet. And my question, it's a bill from Inside Outside Architecture and relating to the irrigation project. And I'm wondering if we were doing that on a flat fee basis or an hourly basis. I don't remember how we got into that.
The 19,000 was for some consultancy work that we had done by the irrigation designers. We had to get some specialist people in to design the irrigation to make sure that they were scaled properly for the parks and had the correct amount of heads, and we could work out what the well pressure was that we needed for those. So we needed to go out to get some specialist help on that part of the project.
And that was run through Inside Outside Architecture?
Yeah, they organised it, and he didn't add a markup onto that. That's just a straight fee from the consultant.
Okay, thank you. I also had a question on item H, and that's page 50 of our packet. I think that's showing consent, yeah. Let me just take a second here. I'll go over and back a couple of times. So this is related to Stantec fees for 2025, and my question was, we're moving from $4,300 to $4,600 a month. I know there's an increase across the board on hourly rates. This one looked higher, so I'm wondering if there's more hours figured into that rate, or if that's just strictly a price increase.
For the retainer fee?
Yes.
To be honest, it was just done to an even $100, but that's the only reason it doesn't match the 4 1/4. That's a monthly fee for all the.
Because that one's more like 7%.
Was it? Yeah, I thought it was rounded. I thought it was just rounded up to the next 100, but maybe that should have been 4,500.
So it's the same number of hours, it's just with the increase that's kind of going across the
Well,
board there?
yeah, I mean, the hours fluctuate tremendously. It's, the intent of the retainer is so that staff or council doesn't feel uncomfortable that I'm sitting here. So you're not paying any additional money for me to be at meetings. So it's a flat fee for all of the meeting attendance and general communications.
It should be 4,500.
Okay, I can adjust that to
4,500.
4,500. Okay, thank you. That was all I had on consent.
Anybody else?
I have one. Jason, we can make that correction on that agreement, correct?
Yeah, if you
46
want
to
to just
45.
cross it out on the one we signed.
I just want to make sure what the council's approving there, they know what to.
Yep.
Well, I did have one, it's not a question, but an ask. I think in the past, it's been included that a document that shows what rate we're paying for what level of staff. engineer versus principal and so on. And I'm wondering if we could get that at some point.
Oh, yeah, we can. So that, admittedly, that was Wink, that we actually put the job titles in there, and now the way Stantec does it is just a billing level. We do have an internal one that I can share on how those correspond. There's some overlapping, but the billing levels and the titles kind of fit together. If that'd be helpful, I can certainly pass that along.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I got one question. Paul, you've got a couple squads you did some work on. Because that must be added equipment that you're adding on the squad or something?
Removing on some and adding on some, but we're reusing as much of the old equipment as we can.
Okay, that's on 3 vehicles, I think it was?
Yep.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Anybody else?
To the nuts and bolts.
Okay, all those in favor of consent, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Carries 5-0. On to open forum. Do I have anybody here for open forum? Come on up. Limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items.
Thank you.
State your name and address.
Larry Jacobson at 13571 141st Avenue North in Dayton.
Okay.
And I'm here because I got a notice from the city of non-compliance to, I think, a zoning ordinance. And I brought extra copies. Would you all like one?
Sure.
Pass it on. I got 7.
Sure, we always get stuff at the last minute. We'll get you that soon.
Good shot, thank you. Appreciate it. I do it so often.
Excuse me. Okay, well, my wife and I lived in Champlin for 34 years, and we decided to make a change, move into a home that we could enjoy our retirement in, and we didn't move far. We moved to Dayton, and we moved in on May 21st of this year. You know, the new house, it's kind of a mix of old and new. There's some neighbors next door with an older house and one across the street, so it's kind of got, I don't know, a new house feel with older type of neighborhood. So anyway, this notice I got in the mail yesterday said I was out of compliance because I had boat trailers in my backyard. And basically, it says in the city code, all parking areas shall be surfaced with concrete or bituminous materials, so as to be dust-free. And the correction notice said remove trailers from the grass area and park on a concrete or bituminous surface. So does that mean I need to rip up my grass and put down asphalt or concrete to park my boat trailer? I got 3 boat trailers in a RV, pop-up RV right now. And when I moved to Dayton, well, before we moved, I checked out cities, Dayton and Maple Grove and Rogers, see if there's any parking restrictions. There's no parking restrictions in any of those cities for putting a boat trailer in your backyard. Now, I see a backyard as a multi-purpose thing. You can put a swimming pool, you can put a trampoline, you can put jungle gym kit set for the kids, playground equipment. You can put chicken coops, things like that. So it's a multi-purpose thing. I also see it as vehicle storage or trailer storage for the off-season. Where I come to disagree with the term parking area is that parking area should be used every day. Like at the front of the house, I have a parking area in the front of the house for my cars, but I don't drive in the backyard. Only when I need to store things. And I think a bunch of us have trailers and things that we put in the backyard. And it's not, I won't pull my trailers out till next May. So this is where I just am confused about putting parking lot in my backyard. Is that something that's required? And if not, shouldn't everybody be doing that? Because there's a lot of trailers parked in backyards in Dayton. Any questions or comments?
There's no parking on the grass.
Okay.
No parking on the grass?
So does that mean anything with wheels? How do we define? I'm just curious. How do we define what's being parked?
What is being parked?
Yep.
So you cannot have a vehicle parked on the grass.
These aren't vehicles, these are boats.
Well, it's a licensed vehicle. Still, so,
So normally the way these work is we will hear what you have to say and then we'll pass it on to staff. My guess is that we will talk about this soon.
I think we need to
Well, I
take a
have,
look
I have
at
a
it.
compliance, as you can see.
By December
The
20th.
date's here, November 22nd is when this was written. And it said, I have December 23rd down here. Correct the zoning code ordinance violations at December 23rd. If you look on the back sheet, you see the postmark. This is the original, this is the envelope that came yesterday. And you can see the meter is dated November 22nd. However, postal, the canceling mark is December 7th, which was last Saturday. So that's 2 weeks from the time this was written to the time it even hit the mail. So what's my recourse as far as being in compliance within that time frame? I mean, if it's something we want to look at later, is it something that can we put off that hard date?
When do we normally, go ahead.
well, it's 30, so there's kind of two different issues. Specific to your case, and what you can do is ask for an extension with Hayden, and we'll work with you on that. The larger conversation is it appropriate to consider an ordinance amendment?
Yes.
We don't allow parking on the grass.
Sounds
Is
like we have to
that-
define terms.
Really? They're
Yeah.
all over Dayton.
Yep,
They are all over Dayton.
I don't disagree with
Yeah.
you.
I know.
So
And
did
that's
we
what
give
I
out a
looked at
couple
when
hundred
I-
of these last week, or
That is something I looked into when
did
I
we give out a
drove.
couple hundred of them last week? If there were?
Several,
Is it more than 100?
no.
Is it?
Oh, I mean, are there more than 100 cars parked on the grass? I'm sure.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
I mean, not to get into the semantics,
So
but let's
I
just keep
guess
moving forward
I would
with
just
it.
suggest you, see if you can get an extension and
How would I do that?
Contact
You can
John or Hayden.
call-
With
yeah.
you guys?
Yep.
and then we will look at it.
Can we look at it then? Can we schedule it for a future
I
city
suspect,
council meeting or?
I
January?
suspect we will, January.
Yeah.
This
seems
is
like
this is
we
the only
need-
one in December, right? For January?
There's one more, but it's usually just to make sure that we get the bills paid.
So,
I just want to note for the council's understanding that we process violation notices on a complaint-based only.
I was gonna say,
I was
So-
gonna ask that, yeah.
Really, the way that we go about it is that we receive a violation through
Right.
email or phone, and then we follow up that way. It's not, we don't go out and investigate for violations.
Well, I brought my trailers in October. And then I think in November, they probably got the complaint. And the complaint, what was the original complaint? Do you remember?
Just rather the parking on the grass, and then there was a question of whether it was on the property itself.
Well, I think that was the main question, was whether it was off the property. It was on the right of way. The back of my lot is on North Diamond Lake Road.
Diamond Lake Road, yeah.
And that's a very wide, it's a 50-foot wide easement on my side. So that was,
Okay.
I think that was the original question, is this, are these vehicles, are they on the easement? That's what the red flag was.
Well,
And is that where they are?
Huh?
Is that where they are?
They're on my property,
Okay.
but my property is just north of North Diamond Lake Road.
they may or may not be
Just
on the easement, is
Pardon?
what you're saying. They may or may not be on the easement, is what you're saying.
Well, they're on the easement.
Right. So how long of an extension, since we're talking about at least January here?
I think if the council is looking for staff to propose an ordinance to allow for trailer parking on grass in residential properties, I think that we can work through that while the violation is outstanding. And we have a
Okay.
consensus of that.
Yeah, I think we'll have to discuss it first, but
Yeah, my question for you, Mr. Sawald, is where does it say that you can't park on the grass in any of them?
There should be a code reference.
Could you send that to me?
It's on your letter.
Yeah,
It's
it's on the
city
list.
code
City code.
1001.19.
Yeah,
Yep, so if you pull up the city code, you'll find it in there.
well, I found it, but it doesn't say that you're not supposed to
It
park.
says you have to park on
says all
surfaces that
parking
are concrete or bituminous. I mean, you can't park on anything else.
That's not clear in this language. I've got the whole paragraph right here, I printed out.
I'm just going from what it says right here. Yep.
Is this something that merits further discussion? And-
not right now.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yep.
Should we-
Yeah, I
should we come
suspect
back
we're
in
gonna have
January
to, yeah, we'll probably,
So there, we would look for there
Discuss
to
it.
be no enforcement on this until we've had a chance to take a look at the ordinance. and
Yeah.
Because
decide
if
it needs
everybody
revision.
got a letter.
Well, it's not everyone, it's everyone whose neighbors complained.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to
If everybody
be
got a
mindful
letter,
of.
though, you'd have a lot of angry
Yep.
homeowners here.
yep.
Because they probably do it for years.
Well, it's clear our ordinance doesn't match reality. If you take a drive around town, it's.
Yep.
You also have to remember, council, mayor and council, you have to remember that this is not we don't actively go and investigate
Right, it's a
things.
complaint.
It's a 100% complaint basis, so
Yep.
when we say that the code ordinance isn't working, well, it's working when there's a complaint
Well,
basis,
and this is
but
probably
we
why
aren't actively going out and finding code.
I'm just saying, it's not clear. I looked at this stuff
Yeah.
before I moved here.
Sure,
And I didn't see any indication that you can't park on the grass.
sure. It's probably buried in some sort of zoning.
Well, I'd like to see it.
Yep.
All right.
This
Thank
is
you.
it.
That's all?
That's
It
it.
doesn't say grass.
No, it just says you have to park on a hard surface. It
Well, I brought
doesn't say you
pavers.
can't park on grass.
What about pavers? I bought these 16-inch pavers. They're 16 inches by 16 inches.
I would recommend that
You
you
can
find a time to
discuss.
talk with John and
Yeah.
Aiden at a later time, and then they can help you through that. Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, you next?
Oh, sure.
Come on up.
Hello again.
Name and address.
Lee Hallquist and 11471 Fernbrook Lane. That's it. I just want to make you all aware that I'm still pumping water like crazy. The construction has started to the west of my house again, and my sump pump is running a lot. I'm sumping out a lot more water than I'm using, and I know you guys are getting ready to approve some big projects out here, some construction next year, but you need to make sure there's adequate drainage, and not just a storm sewer to pump my sump water into, but you need to divert the water that's coming into my property. And, I mean, I got issues with the garbage that's flying in my yard now and stuff too, but the water is a big thing. You know, I shouldn't be sumping water in December. The ground is frozen, it just shouldn't be happening. Right now, I'm pumping about every 11 minutes that my sump is emptying, and it just, the water's coming from someplace, and it wasn't there when I moved in, and I've had like everybody else. My sump pump runs in the spring after heavy rain, but it shouldn't be running continuously, and it's been running for about 3.5 years now. So I just want to make you aware of it as you get ready to approve these projects, because it's something you can be on the hook for. Water diversion is one of the things that's a big deal to residents here and stuff, and the developers should know about it. And you should be taking action or not approving something without knowing where that water's coming from and going to. So that's all I got, and I'll probably see you Thursday, I guess I'll see some of you. Thanks.
Thanks. Anybody else? Anybody online?
So we have quite a few people online. If any of you are here for open forum or would like to speak, go ahead and use the raise your hand function.
Nobody. All right, we'll move on to staff council updates. Zach?
Yes, Mayor, members of council, we have our year-end review event that happens next Wednesday, the 18th. You should have received a notification in your email boxes. City staff is looking to have the event a little longer than normal. We tried to get a hold of some caterers this year based on some, we don't have enough staff to try to plan all this stuff going on and try to figure things out. And we need some additional time to do some activities, and we'd like to close City Hall at 12:30. We are looking to have it instead of at the activity center because we couldn't find any caterers. We'd like to have it at Sundance Entertainment in town here in the afternoons. We'd like to close City Hall at 12:30. Our plan was to have it at 12:30 to 3:30, but to be honest with you, when they come back at 3:30, there's only an hour really left of the day, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, so. Not trying to close City Hall more than we need to, but again, trying to ask to close City Hall at 12:30 for that to happen.
I'm fine with it.
Is council okay with that?
I'm fine with it, yeah.
Okay.
Have an issue.
Okay, sounds good. We'll close City Hall. Thank you very much. That's all I
Have
have.
fun.
Amy?
We just need to reschedule the next city council meeting. So just wondering what works for everyone. It will be a short meeting, everything on the consent agenda. There will be additional items other than just payment of claims, but still shorter items.
Do you want to host it
City
in the
staff.
morning or is
Yeah.
it at the same time?
Likely
What?
going to be still a short meeting.
Yep.
So we can either do the 23rd in the afternoon or the morning. We can do the 26th in the afternoon or the morning. We could do the following week.
I can do 23rd in the morning,
Yeah.
like we normally do, 7 a.m. It's fine by me.
Is it 7 a.m., 8 a.m.?
Whatever time, yeah.
Time do you guys get here?
I can do 8. I can't do before 8 because I don't have
If you want,
childcare.
if you want before 8, I'd have to be here before, which is fine. I can be here before if you need to.
8 works for me.
Just 8 work for anybody.
Yep.
We got to have at least 3. That's all I got.
Yep.
Make sure.
Did you say 8?
I can make that by 8.
I can do 8.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
So 23rd at 8?
23rd at 8. Yep. Thank you very much.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Marty?
Mayor and Council, just a couple of updates. The well 4 rehab, building scaffolding so they can get in through the roof. They're building that at the moment with the cold weather coming in. They should be putting that around the roof inlet towards the end of the week and then starting with the pumping out of the material at the bottom of the well next week. That's the plan currently. Old Public Works shop cleanup. The fuel tanks and waste oil tank were removed last week. We're waiting to get an EPA ID number for the lab-packed drums that are sealed and tight now. So the assumption was that the city had one, but we've never done this before, so we don't have one, so we've applied for one. I'm not sure how long that process will take, but I don't think it should take too long. And everything's sealed, so we're not going to leak anything as well. Ice rinks have been flooded. We seem to be making some good ice at the moment, which is better than we have had the last 2 years. We've actually got some ice on the ground now. It might be open for Christmas, so that's the plan. We'll have them up and running as soon as possible. So
Awesome.
the next few days is going to help us.
Which rinks are being flooded?
The one back here on just at the end of the parking lot there,
Yep.
and the one over at Sundance Woods. Those are the two that we're concentrating on this year.
The Rivers Bend Park we don't do anymore.
No, that is a real problem there. And last time we've had probably 1 year that we were successful with that. Everything just went perfectly. We tried putting plastic sheeting down, but it's just the way the thing's graded. It leaks out into the parking lot, and then we've got a big skating rink in the
mess, yeah.
parking lot, and nothing on the ball diamond there. So without a lot of regrading, that's a lot of work in there.
Good evening, mayors and members of council. Nothing specific to the fire department, but I want to thank all the council members and all city staff that assisted with the Holly Dayton. I know Daniel started it, and then I kind of picked up the chair that first year and the second year, so we had an outstanding turnout. So thanks to all the staff that participated. I look forward to next year.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. Just to let you know, we'll be collecting toys up until Friday morning and sending somebody down to Care 11 for Toys for Tots drive. That will be on Friday night. Shop with a Cop, we're doing December 12th over at Target Rogers. We have 3 families that have been selected, and I believe 6 kids total. So it's a good turnout. And then we'll do coats up until December 19th, and then we'll be doing the drop-off December 20th for the coats. And then I just want to say thank you to Councilmember Chalst and Councilmember Henderson for all their hard work and dedication to the city as they exit from the council seats. Greatly appreciate all the support.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a vacancy on the planning commission, so this has been noticed. We know if anyone, we're happy to accept applications through, I believe it's Monday, January 6th. Then this would go to the council on January 14th. We've had 3 applicants so far.
When's that close?
January 6th. Our intention is to keep it open for about a month. Also, in, I think it was October, the council had a special meeting on states manufacturing. That is kind of moving forward through deed, and we're very close to getting a contract written. So I'm expecting that'll be approved within the next week or two. Then would require signatures from the mayor and city administrator.
No, that's good news. Jason?
Nothing here.
Do you have anything?
I'll just mention, Mayor, members of the council, that you may already know this, but just to be official, the closing on the city's acquisition of the property on 117th Avenue from Diane Baxter closed on Friday morning, so congratulations, you now own that parcel. It's always a fun day when the closer says, done.
Done. No more papers to sign.
Well, it's a fun day when you're a real estate nerd like me.
Can we park stuff over there?
Yeah.
There's no improved surface over there.
I don't really have anything other than you two, Travis and Matt. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Whether or not I'll be here on the 23rd, I can't say. Might be fishing.
Travis?
I tried to have something planned out for this, but ultimately it couldn't come to. So, but I do appreciate all the time that everybody has spent with me as I sat in this role, and all the questions that have been answered, and all the insight that everybody's given me. It's been a huge learning curve over the last 4 years, and I don't take any of it for granted. So I want to just appreciate all the staff time that's been committed to, my needs and things of that nature for not only who I represent, but what we also do here at the city level too. So I appreciate everything. So just not in the seat, but I'll still be part of the city doing other things very well. So thank you all for everything. So.
All right. I thank you both. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just echo that. I appreciate working with you guys as well. The different perspectives. I think it's been ultimately good for us to see things from several angles, and hopefully that helps us get to better conclusions. So I appreciate the time that you guys have put toward this, and best of luck to you going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one more meeting, so I expect to this tonight, but just thank you to everyone for the time they've spent with me to help me get caught up what's going on, how the city works, how to get things done. I really appreciate that. And then thank you to all of you up here as well for putting up with my multiple questions as I try to figure this out and work through it together, so thank you for that.
Item J.
Members of council, I'm going to preface that I've been fighting over a cold, so I'm going to have lots of water
tell.
and
Yeah.
Kleenex, and my nose is extremely red. So you're lucky I have a voice today. That's great, man.
No.
Matt's winning away from me as we're done. That makes sense. Yep. All right. So do want a reminder that this is a truth and taxation meeting. This is a public hearing, so we'll have to open the public hearing after the presentation. If council has any questions about the presentation, please stop me as we go along. I'll do my best to answer them as we go along, just because it's hard to go back and understand what spot we got. So truth and taxation meeting. This is just a general scenario of how the budget goes. There's a lot of previous meetings to this, but essentially the main bullet point items are the preliminary budget was approved on September 10th. That was submitted to the county by September 30th by their deadline. Tonight is December 10th, which is the approval of the final levy and the budget after this public hearing comment. And we will certify the final levy that I can't spell to Hennepin County on December 30th, which will be the end of the month. Legislative impacts, there is not a whole lot of them this year, but I do want to make sure that everyone's aware of them. In 2026, there will be a paid family and medical leave program that is being implemented. That was technically approved in 2023, but I left it on here because they've identified that it's an additional 0.88% payroll tax that will be applied to all employers and employees. That will be for every individual company and city within the state. So that'll be a paid family medical leave act. And I'm sure we'll have more information as that comes along. And the earned safe and sick leave, there was an adjustment this year in the 2024 legislative session that says paid on-call firefighters and volunteer ambulance attendants are now exempt from earning ESST time because it is not scheduled time, it's just time spent on the job, and it's considered volunteer. So, not a whole lot of updates, but neither was the 2024 legislative session. So, for reference, just as we move forward, I've always provided these 1% tax rate. What does that mean for individuals as a homeowner? If a 1% tax rate changes either up or down, it's roughly $53 a year on the average home of $525,000. It's more if your home is more, and it's less if your home is less in evaluation. In comparison, that 1% tax rate for an individual or $53 a year equates to $225,500 of tax revenue for the city. And then within that 1% tax rate, there's tax levy changes. Every 1% of tax levy increased is approximately $79,000. So essentially, it's about every 3% of tax levy change equals 1% of tax rate. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. CPI increased 2.8% from 23 to 24 in comparison. So September, which I was very surprised at, is a 2-month CPI of 0.0%. So things have started to slow down, which is good for us overall. And it's good for everybody because you just see it at home too with your inflationary costs with groceries and everything else. Tax dollars received by the city do not change for the entire year, no matter how much building activity that occurs in that year. And that is a common misconception that most residents do think, is that the city is collecting more dollars every time a new home goes in. That is not the case and not correct. How do property taxes get calculated? I added this last year and I think it was pretty good and understood. I like to add it again just because it's very good for all individuals to know, is how does the property tax number get to be? How it's determined is we determine all the expenditures across all of the funds, whether that's the operating one, which is considered the general fund, and the debt and the capital funds. And then we subtract out all of the revenue sources, so we get some grants, we get some state aids, we get franchise fees, we get interest revenue. There's a myriad of items that we get for other revenues. Those are subtracted out from the expenditures, and then there's a negative number. Whatever that negative number is how the levy is determined. So it is kind of the back end number between, after all is said and done, the levy is just figured out at the end. It's not a set number. So the levy divided by the tax capacity in the city equals your tax rate. Take your assessed value of your home, which is roughly 1% of your value. It could be a little higher if your valuation of your home is higher, but I think that starts at $500,000 is where that 1% is at. And then it's 1.25% for every dollar past $500,000 times the rate to get the taxes that you will pay. And taxes minus the credits minus the refunds equals your net tax. And that's how many property taxes you will pay for the year. So that's kind of how it works in general. It's not a perfect scenario by any means, but it is pretty close. And the tax capacity numbers changes with fiscal disparities, which we learned about last meeting, and but many other things that go into the calculation. But essentially, this is the bare minimum of how it works. And the homeowner pays the property taxes. They're divided up by the county, and then the city receives our property tax settlement twice a year. We are roughly a third of the taxes. So if you look at your total tax bill, take about a third of it, give or take, depending on what school district you're in. That's about what we get as the city. And again, that is different depending on what school district you're in. But in general, it's pretty close. 2025 levy compared to what 2024 was, we are looking at 11.24%, which was decided by the council at the last meeting after much discussion, which I do appreciate. Thank you very much. There was a $425,000 reduction from the preliminary levy that everyone would have seen on their property taxes to what you are seeing on the screen today. So the preliminary levy that was set on property tax statements was 16.63%. Citywide tax levy at this moment, 11.24. So the difference between those is roughly 5.5%. And so when I mentioned earlier a 3% change, every 3% of tax levy equals 1% tax rate. Tax rate roughly dropped 2% because of those changes, which is about roughly what it came out to be for your tax rate. So our tax rate ended up being 38 point something. I think it's 38.5 or something like that on the preliminary levy, and the final levy it's 37.5 in the preliminary levy, 35.441 on the final. So again, it's roughly every 3% of property tax levy equals 1% property tax rate. So what you saw in your property tax statements will not be what you pay in 2025 based on the proposed levy tonight. The tax capacity over the last 5 years has significantly increased. We're about 5 years ago, if you look back at 2020, we were at 11.7 million. Today we sit at $27 million. Just over doubled, double and a half essentially. Over the past 5 years, that is an insane amount of increase. I don't see that increase slowing down quickly. It will slow down if there's no more development, but development takes 2 years to get online, so something that goes up today. You can use the Opus building, for example, that's going up as we sit today at 81 in the Parkway. You'll see that in 2 years on our property tax statements. So it takes roughly 2 years to get there. Tax levy compared to tax capacity, the difference between the black line and the blue line, green line, whatever below, is the tax rate. So as the tax capacity goes up and the tax levy stays the same, that means the tax rate is decreasing. As you can see, those lines were much closer back in 2019 and 2020. The tax rate back then was roughly 50 to 56%, somewhere in there, depending on what year you looked at. Today it sits at 35.441 with this property tax levy. Impact on homeowners, what does that mean for next year? A $525,000 house for 2024 would pay $1,893 if you just follow lines across. And 2025 preliminary based on this levy, not what we'll see in our property tax statements, is $1,883. So roughly $10 a change negative in 2025. This does not include any change in your home value. It also does not include anything related to the school district or the county. This is just the city portion of your taxes. 5 years of historical data. What the left graph means is the difference between the tax capacity and the tax levy. So if those two numbers are matching or close to matching, that typically means the tax rate stays the same. If there's a significant difference between the blue line and the red line, means that the tax rate would have dropped significantly. The biggest one you can see is payable 2023. We had a 35% or almost 35% tax capacity, and we had a 3% change in the levy. That dropped the tax rate by over 10% that 1 year. That was a significant change that happened within the last few years. As you can see in the right graph, that shows the tax rate and what you actually paid in taxes. So as you can see, 22 to 23, you saw that 13% decrease almost in the tax rate, which is what actually citizens would have paid at that time for property taxes. And that is related to the left-hand graph. A lot of capacity change, not a lot of levy change, means tax rates goes down. And it's not just that it stayed very flat, or essentially stayed very flat for the last 3 years. A slight decrease with this year. 2025 tax rate comparisons within the Hennepin County. The Dayton one is final, the blue one, but all of the other ones are preliminary. So that doesn't mean that they won't go down, but they cannot go up from there. Every single city on this graph went up from 2024 based on their current numbers. Only one that did not was Dayton and Plymouth. And essentially we are on the lower third, I would say. I've heard from Rogers, they are not going to decrease their levy. I've heard from Champlin, they're not going to decrease their levy. Corcoran is not going to decrease their levy. Those are the three that I've touched base with. And all three of them are keeping their levy at the same number, which means their tax rate will be the same for 2025. So we are on the lower third of the graph. When I started here in 21, we were on the upper third, or maybe even upper quarter of the graph when I started in 21. Again, I use communities around us. It's hard to get Anoka County stuff because for whatever reason they make it super difficult to find. And I don't know why, but I'd love to be able to compare to Anoka and Ramsey and other communities in Anoka County, but for whatever reason Anoka County is really hard to work with getting numbers. Yeah. The Wright County is even worse. They don't send their numbers until November. So. I do appreciate that about Hennepin County. We were able to get our numbers for tax capacity changes on a monthly basis starting in March. So I really do appreciate that. I will say that as a one positive about being in Hennepin County. Key changes for 24 to 25. So the main things that happened, we have some capital project funds that increased dollars. I'll get those. I touched base on a couple of those a few slides ago, but essentially a few $100,000 or more are going into each individual fund, pavement management, capital equipment, etc. We had a decrease in the ARPA dollars that were received from the federal government. We use those to cover operations for 2 years. Remember, we had $360,000 that we, roughly $365,000, and we used $182,000 a year for 2 years to cover operations in order to keep the tax rate lower. That fell off. Happened to be at the same time that the expenditures for our assessment services went to zero as well, so Hennepin County now covers 100% of our assessment services, which happened to be about the same number in 2025. So we were paying about $190,000 a year in assessment services, and now we're paying $0 until we reach a population of 25,000, and then that will go back up. So just to keep that in mind for the council.
Or they change their minds.
Or they change their minds. But for now, they have not changed their minds, and we're going to use it. Also, general fund expenditures, we have additional staff, so 2 police officers are looking to be hired, both at mid-year. 2 firefighters are part of this budget, 1 part-time public works office staff, and 1 additional part-time public works and parks and maintenance employee. There's an increase in the budget based on historical trends, what we're seeing with legal, inspections, assessing, so on and so forth. Assessing, again, went way down, so went from 190 to 0, so those historical trends are a little different, but and then increase based on current inflation of the line items that you see that are essential, which is utilities and supplies. No different than what you'd see at home, which is supplies for us is groceries to you guys, as in personal lives. But any other questions on key changes? Otherwise, I'll keep moving. General fund revenue overall, that is it is increasing by $675,000. About 3/4 of our revenue for the general fund or operations of the city come from property taxes. As you can see, the difference between the property tax number in 24 and 25 is roughly $550,000. The difference in the other numbers make up the difference between the 675 and the 551. So again, that's licenses and permits, intergovernmental revenue, charges for services, fines and forfeitures, etc. Interest earnings are doing extremely well. I will say that that's a significant increase from the last few years, and hopefully that can continue. The idea that we will try to invest in longer-term interest investments so that we can maintain the interest that we are earning today, because as interest goes down for everyone to borrow, means that interest goes down for us to invest in as well. So take advantage of it while it is high for us to invest in. General fund expenditures overall, again, that's matching 675 like I mentioned before. We take the expenditure number and we take away other additional revenues and get the difference in that, which is the property tax levy. General fund expenditures are going up $675,000. A majority of that is related to new employees. Again, you can see a big in patrol and investigation. That's mostly related to, we have the flock system that's being added as well. That's an item there. We have a couple of police officers as well that are being added. Over time, there's a number of items in that patrol and investigation. Also, a new union contract was negotiated. That's in these numbers as well. That'll be discussed with the council tonight. I've added those in there as just a general number. Again, it's not approved yet, but as a placeholder. Another big decrease, like I said, it should, was assessment services of going down $195,000. Other basic touch points, I want to make sure I touch base on the fire department, because that is including with two new firefighters. That goes up 8%, or roughly $74,000 for 2 new officers. And then what other big ones are there? Planning and economic development. So we added $30,000 next year for a study that the council can derive on and what they'd like to do. This year we did a master plan study that was totally unbudgeted for. Hopefully we're able to cover that within the budget overall just by moving other pieces around. But next year we'd like to be planned out for that, which was mentioned at the beginning, that we want to have dollars planned out for the council to be able to spend related to a plan that we'd like to do next year, or a study. If you don't use it, it doesn't get lost, it just would be able to be moved to the next year. Those are the main big changes that happened overall. I'm not hearing any major questions. Okay, we'll move on to the utility fund budget. So that's all related to tax levy, and everything related to tax levy was previously discussed. Utility fund budgets, these were touched on based in October, and I touched base on these overall. Nothing much has changed as the water fund and the sewer fund. So the water fund is 100% based on water fees and user fees that come from utility billing. If you look at the 2025 final budget, all the way at the bottom, total revenue is $3.6 million, which is the far right number straight above the E on the water. And the bottom right number in the expenditures is $2.692 million. So there's $1 million difference there. The reason for that is so we can cover depreciation and new assets, as we want to be able to put money away for new assets. As the council's aware, it costs $7 million for a wellhead treatment plant. So They are not cheap, and just doing $1 million a year in what I would call reserve dollars takes 7 years for us to pay for that project, and that doesn't include inflation. So we want to be able to have a healthy water fund, so they're able to put up water towers and wellhead treatment plants, provide water for our residents and fire suppression for our residents at any time. Sewer fund is not quite the same. It's a little different. The sewer fund, we don't have a wastewater treatment plant. We don't have any major expenditures related to treating water, or wastewater, I mean. And so if you see the bottom right number, which is underneath the second E in sewer, 1.865 million in total revenues, and the total expenditures in the bottom right number is 2.2 million. That's a negative $400,000. Part of that is including depreciation, which is budgeted at $775,000. And the reason for that is because that is actually not a cash item. We don't pay anybody for that. That's just putting money away towards our future capital projects and capital needs. Sewer fund isn't as volatile because we don't have to treat the water. We just have to get the wastewater to Met Council. So as long as we can cover the costs of treating the wastewater, we should have enough money to be able to do any capital projects. We don't have any big projects within the sewer fund. If it's a water or a sewer main break, we can fix those pretty quickly, and they cost $40,000 or $60,000, something like that. They're nothing crazy. We do major road projects and we'll have to redo those, but all of our infrastructure is fairly new. Most of the sewer was put in 2007 or had been put in from developers since 2013, 2014, so we don't have any major projects that are needed at this time in the sewer fund. I talked about these utility rates before, but they are the same. We're looking at 3% increase in water rates and a 2% increase in sewer rates. The reason for that is because the sewer rate for Met Council went up significantly, and 2% is able to cover at least that increase. Not all of it. I think it went up technically 4%, but we have a little bit of extra dollars in the sewer fund to be able to cover for depreciation. And water rates continue to have an increase, and the reason for that is, again, because we are still a growing city. If we had a bunch of people like Maple Grove, our fees would be significantly less because of power of numbers. The more people that use water, the more dollars we have in here. We are making money on water, and the reason for that is so we can put in new infrastructure. If we'd had a lot more people in here, we wouldn't have as high water rates, which we have that's a common complaint we get. But the reason for it is because we are so much smaller than the community we're compared to mostly, which is Maple Grove. 2024 cost comparison. I know that the council, I removed recycling, I removed street repair. I added stormwater in there, and the reason for that is because currently we don't bill for stormwater. That's currently just on our developers to pay for.
Yeah.
And so it's just in general for the council to know where we're at in perspective. You can easily take out $5 or $6 or $10 or whatever it is for stormwater. And the reason, because we don't cover that with Levy. We don't. The only person that covers that right now is developers. Stormwater won't be a big issue until we need to redo roads. Once we need to redo roads, if there's not stormwater already on that roadway, we will need to add stormwater, which means we either have to buy property and also add curb and gutter, and that's new regulations related to not MSA, watershed regulations. In general, we're right about the middle of the pack. I don't have 2025 rates for any of the other communities, but I do have it for Dayton, so we're the 4th lowest on this list, but the 6th lowest or almost dead center if we do 2025's rates. I would presume that all of the communities that are on there are going to have at least something for an increase. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm presuming that. So I don't have those numbers, but we want to provide it to the council overall. That is all I have for tonight, but I will stand for questions and I will stand for the public hearing if there's any questions that come up.
Any questions for staff?
None from me.
And this is not approval of the budget. This is just a public hearing.
Yep.
Approval of the budget will be later.
Any
in the
questions?
Not on this part, no.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Do we have anybody here to speak? Anybody online?
So if you wanted to speak on the public hearing on the truth and taxation, if you use the raise your hand function. Not seeing.
All right, I'll close the public hearing on that.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
All right, item K, Ziegler.
All right. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, tonight you're asked to hold a public hearing and consider approval of easement vacation on the Ziegler property. Currently platted as Lot 1, Block 1, VF 13 edition. The vacation would remove the existing easements on the property and would reestablish the drainage and utility easements on the boundary with the replatting or the recording of the Ziegler Dayton Edition plat. Standard procedure for replatting already platted property is vacating the existing easements, so that's all I got for this one.
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
You'll have to
Yeah,
open the public hearing.
sorry.
Yep. Now I'll open the public hearing on this. Anybody speak to this? Anybody online to speak to this?
So if you use the raise your hand function for the vacating the drainage and utility easement. I'm not seeing any.
All right, close the public hearing. We have a motion.
I'll second. Okay.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0 for item K. On to item L.
All right. Same procedure as the last item, just a little bit different easement regarding the vacation. The city council is asked to hold a public hearing and consider a request to vacate an existing temporary cul-de-sac easement at the end of Riverview Lane North, located within the Riverwalk development, more specifically the second edition of the Riverwalk development. The request of vacation will be followed by reestablishment of the cul-de-sac easement with a revised legal description that reflects the actual layout of the cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac currently is basically right in the middle of the right-of-way with equal distribution of the easement area on the surrounding properties. While the offsetting of the cul-de-sac was originally intended to minimize the impact on surrounding buildable lots, the single lot that the cul-de-sac was initially going to impact solely was platted as a buildable lot rather than left as an outlot. The revised legal description reflects a centered location of the cul-de-sac, creating equal impact of two adjacent properties, and then very minor impacts on the two properties directly to the east. Staff recommends approval of the vacation on the condition that a new easement agreement with updated legal description is recorded in the existing easement's place. And I'll just note that we do, at a staff level, have that easement for review to be recorded here in the near future. So here's just a showcase of the existing easement area and then with the revised.
Is the revised what we're proposing or the builder's proposing?
What's that?
Is the revised what we're proposing or what the builder is proposing?
This was submitted by the developer.
Okay.
What is the proposed easement description?
And didn't we do this recently in Kingsview? When they did Kingsview, didn't we do this? Then we had to go back. It was a big issue because there was a cul-de-sac at the end of Kingsview that got ripped out and we had to replace. Am I thinking the right thing?
There was one on the north end of Kingsview.
Yeah.
That lit up, yeah.
Yeah. So why would we do this again if it caused an issue last time we did it?
Well, the cul-de-sac is already there. This is just basically matching the legal description with the outline of how the cul-de-sac was built.
Okay.
But how was it supposed to be built? I didn't ask how. I
Like-
get that's how they built it was the proposed, but how was it supposed to be built?
As the existing is shown there on the left.
Okay. So it wasn't, the builder didn't build it the way they were supposed to, and now they want it changed to match what they built.
I would say that that is correct with the addition of that being a buildable lot. You're kind of limiting the impact on that south lot and evenly distributing it. I've got a description, or at least on the next slide here, kind of an example of what we look to avoid in the future here.
Right. Yep.
And then this is kind of what the anticipated look hopefully will be.
I'm not even sure how they were able to sell that.
No,
But
I had that same question about what that you're asking, Matt, about, was this a big mistake? And somehow I drove down this road today.
Oh, really?
And which road? We looked at three of them.
Accidentally?
The one on the left, truly. And I
it's
ended
bizarre.
up at the end of this dead end, and literally it takes up 2/3 of these people's front yard. And it was always, clearly it was built to be a temporary situation because the curb and gutter is there, and they just paved part of the yard. And so it's a pretty odd solution, even if it was temporary. So I understand better now why it needs to be straightened out.
And I think that this was just from my understanding, this was the last lot that was built in Diamond View Estates, was where the cul-de-sac is currently. I will also note that the applicant is here if you have any direct questions for him or anything like that.
So if we do it the way it is on 138th, and then in the example, 138th gets extended beyond that, what happens to the cul-de-sac whose response? Is we just keep it like that with a weird roundabout there, or does the road then get straightened out? And if so, who pays to then repair the properties where the cul-de-sac is now?
I think that is a question that we've dealt with at a staff level, but ultimately, like the Riverwalk developers, they had to rip out cul-de-sacs that were placed in Diamond View Estates that were temporary, like on Kingsview.
Yep.
The developer of the property to the north was the one that ended up removing the excess cul-de-sac area and turning it into just normal road with normal right-of-way.
So we pass the buck to the next developer?
At this point, there's no, I don't know if there's any recourse for requiring the existing developer to remove what is there. I think that'd be a conversation that we'd want to have early with any developers that come in for that westerly property, and make sure that some sort of language like that gets incorporated into the DA for replacement.
I just know that on Kingsview, it wasn't the smoothest of processes, so I want to make sure that if we're going to approve this, that we have a better process in place for when that does develop,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
those two landowners or three landowners, almost looking at the way it clips that one corner, are going to get stuck with this, and we don't want them coming to the city saying, you need to fix this, when we approved it, and yet we don't have a solution to make sure they don't get stuck with basically the road being ripped out, but nothing but dirt up there.
Coming back, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So is the existing, or the proposed new cul-de-sac, does that impact the sidewalk on the opposite side of the road?
No, actually, the way that I don't have an aerial, there might have been an aerial in the packet, but the cul-de-sac actually has the sidewalk in there currently where it's supposed to be and where it will remain, with excess asphalt kind of creating that cul-de-sac edge to the north of that.
Okay, so that'll remain in the location it's in today?
Yes, and that is currently within the right-of-way that is platted for Riverview Lane.
Sure.
Any more questions? I will open up the public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak to this? Anybody online to speak to this?
You can use the raise your hand function if you wanted to speak on this public hearing. Not seeing
All
that.
right, I'll close the public hearing. Okay. I will look for some more questions, a motion and a second.
A motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion?
I just want to say both solutions kind of suck. At the end of the day, both solutions suck, and one should have just been an outlot with a turnaround in it versus either of these. I think there's a better solution than either of these, and that we could probably find, but
I think they're requesting in the future for future development where temporary cul-de-sacs are established. I think a recommendation at a staff level would be to leave that area as an outlot.
Yeah.
So it's not built upon, creating issues like that in the future.
yeah. Because this is going to come back, but it might not come back for
Well,
years, and
You
no
still
one will
have the
remember.
issue,
Well, that
it's just,
138 too.
at least it's not somebody there with the cul-de-sac in their front yard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the owner of the outlot then, so. Which is what they ran into at River Hills. The owner of the outlot was the HOA. And then the HOA had to figure out how to make it work. So either way, somebody gets the rep on the stick.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Carries 5-0, and we are on to item M.
Developers on his way.
Fantastic. Mayor, members of council, we'll get started here, then the developer will jump in the middle of the conversation. So the discussion on the public finance assistance related to the Parkway neighborhood that we just discussed and approved at the last council meeting. Again, as you remember that in November of 2024, we had a preliminary approvals for a comp plan amendment, rezoning, preliminary plat, PUD, and a site plan for the entire parcel that is 50-some acres on the south side of 94. The plat is on the left-hand side, the preliminary plat that you would have seen. As you remember, Project 1 is 180 apartments. That means the roads and utilities to Phase 1. Project 2, which has not been approved or seen, and the length with the council is 160 apartments, unit equivalents, and road and utilities to Maple Grove or Project 2 within the picture on the left. The public finance request is for $2.7 million to forgive city fees, both on Project 1 and Project 2. Additional is a land write-down. Current valuation, which we had done on the property of Parcel 2, which we currently own, is $780,000 worth of land. Again, that's based on a valuation that was done. Not sure how accurate that can be based on appraisals, but that is what the appraisal gave us back, and that's been the company we've been using for the last few appraisals. And the additional request is a $2.5 million city GO bond. There are some additional things we could do instead of a GO bond, but and I will get into those in a minute. But the total finance request is for all of these items. The land write-down, again, you can use any number you want to. The idea was that the developer is going to put a roadway through the project. The parcel of land has no value to the city of Dayton overall anymore. We had intended to use this as a wetland a wetland bank area. With the original person that we had dealt with in the wetland bank, said that they would this would be a great wetland bank, that there was turnover in staff at, and I don't know what, at Bowser, there you go. And the new staff member said, this is not a good idea to do wetland bank here, you should not do it. The time when we were purchasing this parcel, this is before the interchange went in order for us to acquire the stormwater ponding, so this parcel went straight up and down. If you were to extend the property lines, it went straight up and down. If we were to just acquire the property for stormwater ponding, when we did the Parkway, it was roughly $400 and some thousand, and the property owner wanted $500,000 for the whole thing. So the city at the time said it would make more sense for us to buy the whole thing than buy the little tiny sliver of stormwater ponding, which is why we ended up with that parcel. So there's no real value for us anymore as a city, and we are holding on to it, and we are paying taxes on it every single year. So we pay roughly $3,500 in taxes from the city in order to have that parcel in our name. As it is not serving a government function, so we pay taxes on that property.
Even though it was slated for ponding?
The portion that is ponding is not taxed. Just
yeah,
the portion that's on the south side of in their interchange, because it serves no public purpose besides the city is holding onto it. If it was for wetland bank, that would be considered a public purpose, but because it's not a wetland bank yet, we cannot claim it as a public project.
And so why would we? So they're now saying it wouldn't be a good source for a bank.
That is correct.
And we had a prior.
So the staff member at Bowser initiated and said, yes, if you're going to buy that, that'd be a great spot to put wetland bank at.
Yep.
There was staff turnover, and I can Quisberg was the contact with them. So
I'm just wondering why we know this opinion is correct versus the last one.
I can have Quisberg mention that maybe.
There's actually quite a few factors that go into it, including land raise from adjacent property owners, but it was viewed as a favorable project. Once we got deeper into it, we realized we wouldn't be able to turn as many credits out of it. In other words, it wouldn't have been quite as successful as a project, as a standalone bank. Now, this being part of a larger development, there's more opportunity because of the additional land rights and the ability for them to mitigate on site. So we do see value in it being combined with the project.
Okay.
This was purchased with stormwater dollars, so developer payments from previous stormwater funding was purchased for that property. It was not purchased with tax dollars. If that helps the conversation and all, but just in general.
This one doesn't bother me, I mean, too much. It's the next one.
Sure. So I'm going to get into all of those individual details in the next ones, besides the land write-down. Unless there's any major concerns from the council, please let me know. We can always come back and talk about those. But essentially what the city said is that if the developer is going to put the road across the property, it makes sense for us just to let the developer do what they do, is to develop the property. That way we get some tax benefit out of it long-term. Everything north of that roadway would essentially become developable land, and then they could use that wetland bank south, or wetland area south of that roadway to be able to offset any wetland needs that they have on the north side. But essentially to be able to say, okay, we need it developed anyways, it doesn't do us any good to hold on to it, and we're going to get tax dollars by having it developed. So it makes a whole lot of sense, at least from an economic development standpoint. Each phase development fees, which has been talked about and discussed and previously before, but do want to make sure everyone knows where they're coming from. Phase 1 is on the left-hand side. Those are development fees of 180 units, broken down by each individual fund. Storm, sanitary, water, park, and trail, those first half ones are done with development and any development that comes into Dayton. The bottom half is any building permit fees. These are charged to every building permit that comes into the city of Dayton, no matter if it's a home or if it's for a apartment building or if it's for a business. The building permit fees are on the bottom left-hand side there for phase 1. Total eligible fees for city phase 1, which do not include Met Council SAC, because we are not the end result of those. That is Met Council money, and WAC from Maple Grove are in the total eligible fees for city phase 1, which is $1.545 million. Phase 2, again, that's not what being developed today, but will be shortly behind, and figured working with the developer, he has mentioned that it would be essentially the same project going at the same time if we were to wrap those two into together, try to get more fees and be able to help with the development overall. Again, breakdown, storm, sanitary, water, park, and trail on the top. Again, that's developed at 12 units an acre for 160 units. Again, these are estimates for myself. I don't know if those will be exactly 160 units. It could be 165, it could be 155, I'm not sure. And then building permit fees. So total eligible fees for city phase 2 is $1.364 million. That includes all of the top ones and then any SAC and WAC from the city's perspective. So that kind of incorporates, I'm going to go back one slide here. That kind of incorporates public financing request. Item number 1, $2.7 million. Item number 2, or item number 3 on that is the request for the bonding. There are 3 possibilities for funding. I'm not sure if any one of them are, better than the other one, but the first option is to bond. So I did have Jason Arsvald with Ellers run some comps on bond years and dollar amounts for if the city were to bond. And again, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, depending on the dollar amount. These are rough numbers and the best, kind of average. Some years might be more, some years might be less, but again, just a general number per year. As a point of reference, phase 1 only of the project will pay $600,000 a year in property taxes based on the current tax rate we have. City of Dayton is roughly a third of that, which I mentioned earlier in the TNT meeting. So that would amount to about $200,000 a year in property taxes coming into the city of Dayton for this project of phase 1 only. So if you use the number on the right, which is the $200,000 number, you can kind of figure out where in the bond years and the dollar amounts line up related to this. $2.5 million should be somewhere between 15 and 20 years, and I used 5-year increments because that's just most common for bonding. Doesn't mean we couldn't have 16 years or 12 years. It just seems a little more. I'd look to Jason Arsvald to give us some more feedback on that. Again, I'm only using phase 1 of the project, not any of the future phases at all, either within that bonding calculation number. We could also do a loan from the city, essentially give the fees to the developer up front and essentially say, okay, you're going to keep doing phases as we go along here. I'm guesstimating the fees based on what future potential projects are, based on the entire site plan that I've seen. Phase 3 and phase 4, I do not have a phase 5 in here. I'm not sure what that is. Did my best guess based on the phases 3 and 4. Phase 3 is the apartment building that's on the north side of the project overall. So we could always do a loan from the city. Essentially, we wouldn't take out a bond. We would just pull the money from those individual funds, just as I have marked out there. We then send a check or a subsidy to the developer in order to do that, and then we would just get those fees back over time once the developments were to come into place.
How does that impact our investments? I mean, isn't that kind of Peter Paul thing?
Yep, it's a Peter Paul thing. So yeah, you're gonna take Peter to pay Paul. So we are gonna, we'll have to reduce investments. So we probably have to. We wouldn't have to pull any new ones. I just wouldn't be able to invest the dollars that we have currently.
Right.
I try my best to allocate out based on projects and based on the CIP numbers we have. I try not to do too aggressively, because if I do it perfectly and then we move a project up or another project comes in over budget, now we have no extra, reserves available to do that project, and all of a sudden now we're pulling dollars to pay a project early, which means now we're losing money on investments. My goal is always to be a little conservative, but also still be as aggressive as possible to try to earn as much dollars as possible, because the longer you invest dollars, the more consistent income you have So I could invest at 5 years and get 4.5% or 5% interest. Whereas if I could do 1 year, I might be able to get 3.8 or 4.1 or something like that. So
I
again,
guess
so
what I'm
it's-
getting at is
Yep.
the simple fact that whatever you invest today,
Yep,
you're gonna reduce it by that amount,
that's correct.
and therefore, we're gonna lose that interest.
Yep,
So
and you could
that's-
say on average, it's about 4%
Right,
on that.
okay.
The last possibility, and I've not addressed this with the developer at all, this is just discussions internally that we've had since our conversation this morning, which is a special assessment on the property. I know that doesn't mean that it's going to be forgiven for by any means, but this has been a common practice that's happened amongst development, is that essentially we'll pay for it up front, we special assess the property, and the property then pays it back over time at whatever years we have it set at. So essentially, we upfront the money again, you can use 2.5 or whatever number you have, we pick it out of one fund, and then we just get a special assessment property tax every single year. Similar to what we do on any other project that would be, normally we would bond for it and then do a special assessment, which we could do that too. Or we can use our own money and say we're gonna special assess it and just forego those dollars and be able to get the money back over time. So those are the three possibilities for funding on the bonding aspect of things.
Wouldn't they have a significant hit then? I mean, if we're talking about an assessment,
Yep.
I mean, they still gotta get that money
They
out.
still, yeah, the developer still has to pay the money, so they wouldn't have to get it up front, but they would be able to pay for it back over time. Some developers are able to do that because they're able to increase rent or change rates of whatever they're building or whatever else in order to pay for that assessment over time. Again, this is a common practice that I've heard of doing special assessments, essentially they waive their right to contest the special assessment and then just attest it to the property for future collection. Those are the three options I came up with. I'm happy to come up with any other options. This isn't a great ask to have at the last minute. There are some timing calculations that are causing some, I would say, forcing of this conversation. I normally would have asked this council to pull the item from the agenda tonight based on this new information. However, based on timing for the developer, he has said that we need to have it on this agenda, and I would agree that we need to have a conversation within the council before we move forward.
So phase one will bring in 200K to the city.
Once it's fully, yep. So again, remember, it takes 2 years. Once it gets up, then it takes 2 years for it to go. So we'd
Yeah.
have to do, this is where I'd have to rely on Jason Arsvold here, which is why he's here tonight, is to be able to run some scenarios for tax abatement dollars. This essentially would be a tax abatement project. So what would mean is that the taxes for this project would specifically go to that bond. So it wouldn't affect anything outside of that boundary of the property, so it's not gonna affect the other residents that are here today. But it would forego those taxes on that one phase for the next years, depending on what.
Well, it kind of will affect the other residents, right? Because we won't be getting any tax revenue,
gonna
real
be-
tax revenue in, but we're going
For
to have
phase
more
one.
police calls, more fire calls.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost the city more because this exists, and the citizens are the ones that are going to pay that price.
They will pay that price, yep. And again,
Yeah.
it's only for phase one I'm using. I'm not using any phase $2 or anything else. And based on what the conversation with the developer has been, is that phase two will slowly, or will quickly be behind phase one. And that's why I only used phase one as the portion, because I didn't want to include phase two. If you include phase two, now you at least double it per year. And then you take the time in half, but then again, you have all the other costs related to operations of that facility on that side of things. which,
You know,
again, police calls and the fire.
Would have been
calls and
nice
so
to
on.
see like a spreadsheet.
I would love to run a spreadsheet for you if I had more time.
So
Go
the
ahead,
question
Dave.
I gotta start with is what happened?
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
been talking about this project for well over a year.
A year and a half now,
And
and now all of a sudden we gotta hurry up and get it done in the next 10 days.
and I sounded like Scott there, but that was my question.
I mean, this is essentially, I mean, it's almost the same as a TIF at this point in time. Like, we're subsidizing the development,
Yeah, I will say that.
and it's not what we wanted there, right? I mean, before I was on council, the council voted down a building development here because it asked for TIF.
Yep.
And this one came in and said, no extra needed from the city, we're just gonna be able to do it, and all of a sudden, at the last minute, we're asking for it, and it feels like,
It's not specifically a TIF, but
I
it is
understand.
very.
it's the same impact to
It
the
is
city's
impacts to the
financials.
city, the
Yeah.
cities, but it is not
They-
TIF. There is a significant difference in market values between a TIF project and this
And
one.
I will
get that.
say, in the short term, it looks a lot like that TIF. Long
Yep.
term, it doesn't.
Correct.
That's why it'd be nice to see.
Yeah, I would love to show you a spreadsheet if I had any more information. I will say that I learned this information as of 9 o'clock this morning, that I will give you the short story as best as I can. So the developer and myself had been talking over many, many months, and obviously the last year and a half, and we had come to an agreement that, yep, we'll waive, or we figured we could waive fees. That seemed reasonable. That seemed understood across all council and myself. The city of Dayton had said, our fees will be waived. That's our input into the project, which is what we've done historically. If we waive fees, we did it for the Cubes building. We've done it for Brayburn Trails development. We've done it for Sundance Greens. We've done it for other projects in town that have done projects for the city, and then we waive fees on that behalf in order to get the project done. That's our contribution. The developer's perspective was that that's his equity that he's putting into the project, so he's going to give us the fees, and that's his fees are going to go into the project. And so he counted his fees that he's paying as his equity into the project, and I counted the same fees as our contribution into the project. So we were double counting the fees related to the development. So the developer said, that's my contribution as equity, that's my dollars into the project, that's my equity. I'm taking the money, I'm not giving it to you, city, I'm giving it to the project overall. And as the city's perspective, I said, yep, that sounds good, we'll waive fees. So in short story, as we've been talking about this for many, many months, it's all been on the same page the whole time, but we're double counting the same fees from both sides.
Just a slight clerical error.
Yeah, I wouldn't say slight, but I would say major.
Right.
But yeah, so from the city's perspective, we were counting the fees as that's our input into the project for giving of city fees. And the developer was saying, that's my fees, I'm putting them into the project. So that's why it essentially is the same number, is because we've double counted those numbers twice.
This is the second big project now where the developers come and ask for something, either TIF or this GO bond or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has Jason taken a look, or is it, I mean, my guess is the property's being purchased for too much or overvaluated one way or the other. If they can't get this done without that extra help, in my mind, that's extra that the developer shouldn't be paying to the property owner.
Yeah, we can,
Jason.
Jason, you want to come up
I
here?
would suggest calling Jason Oswald up to the discussion and talk about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just name and address.
Oh my goodness.
So good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Jason Oswald with Ellers, Municipal Advisor for the city. The question was on the land. And so, yeah, we did look at that. I mean, it is over, quite a bit over the current assessed value. We didn't do an appraisal of the land. It's not as if the project is paying on a per unit basis too much for land for apartments, but we did raise that as an issue. If it costs this much to serve the property with utilities, then is it really worth that much? I mean, generally we start with the philosophy that development pays its own way, and in this case, it really can't if it's going to pay that price for the raw land. So that was one concern that we did raise, yes.
Just
What other concerns? Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
what is how much do you believe it's overvalued by, or did you not really detail it that down?
Mayor, I didn't quantify that, you know.
You said it was one of the concerns or one of the items. What were the other ones?
Well, Mayor, members of the council, I wouldn't say concerns necessarily, but every time we look at these projects, we're just trying to make sure that what's being represented is, the full picture and the assumptions are accurate, and that the subsidy that's being granted isn't more than is necessary to make it feasible in the market. And so, we got comfortable up to the fee amount, but then our analysis really stopped at that point. And if we were to go further than that, it really requires then an analysis of all the phases, including the final phase, because I think all of the land at this point is being sort of weighted into that first phase. So it's really difficult to know what those future phases is. They're going to be effectively like a windfall that comes to those phases because it doesn't have a land cost attached to it, and it's all being absorbed by phase one.
So that analysis is something I think I need, and now I'm hearing we don't have time.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be forced into a rush decision because
Yeah.
the lack of planning on someone else's part does not constitute an emergency on ours.
Yep.
And the other question, is there anything that stops the current property owner from just splitting this up into different outlots, Zach, and then just selling the one outlot for project one they need now versus the developer buying everything now? Because that would then
could do that.
reduce the upfront cost, I'm just guessing a significant chunk, just given the size of that land.
Yeah, they'd have to do a lot split, which would have to be approved by council, but yeah.
So one of the complications with this is you still, even if it's just one lot that's platted, you still need the road and the roads
Yep.
associated
Yep.
with
Yes.
stormwater.
Yeah, he'd have to
bonding.
purchase, essentially we'd make his outlots for parcel one, and I'm using the map here in front of us. Parcel one and then the north portion. Anything that's not colored in yellow or orange would have to be then considered not purchased by the developer.
Wow, that would be, yeah.
We did ask that question too, not to interrupt, but I just understood that that wasn't an option or the current agreement for the purchase of the property, but that would have been something that would have helped alleviate some of those upfront expenses.
Yeah, that was my point of, is like, you may not eliminate all of it, but you could eliminate a lot of the upfront costs that way.
I guess I'm still a little bit off balance with the second part of this. I understand the misunderstanding or where that, how that got created with the numbers getting used twice. But it was, when it was originally talked about, the need for the forgiveness of fees piece of it was related to the cost of getting the road in, which benefited other properties in the city in general. But now we're essentially doubling that amount, and that's not a $5 million road. So I don't,
$6 million.
I'm kind of lost on the need. And I'm hearing that maybe the land is overpriced, but that's not within our purview to negotiate land costs or overall development costs for that matter. I still, it's a big ask and it's coming at the last minute, and it really, I'm disappointed, I'll say that to the developer, that we've been taking this ride for, a year and a half, and we've all been pretty excited about this as being a good project, and now I feel a little bit like we got to do this or the thing is done, and I don't like the way this has come about. I don't think it needed to, and I think this information should have come forward a lot sooner. If this was known from the beginning that this thing wouldn't fly without this much support from the city, we should have had that information and taken that walk together, and now we're not.
Yep. We have any more questions for others? Should we have the developer come up?
It's up to you, Mayor and Council.
Come on up. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Chair, nice to see you.
No more fingernail polish.
Oh, yeah, not a lot. What is it?
I want to see your fingernails.
Green.
Green's next.
I
want the green.
I hope
He
that's
told me,
the-
he
I
says
hope
coming
that,
around.
mimics the billfold too.
Yeah. All right, good afternoon. Happy day, everybody. Michael Elzafan, the applicant. Apologize. I thought we were starting, I'm here late. So let me defuse a little bit. I'm in zero interest in trying to push something that every one of you is not 1,000% comfortable getting through. Not my intention to try to jam this. We, the staff and your team, have been working on this since, last November. January 23rd, I sat before all of you and we had to kick the can because of this EAW. 9 months later, $250,000 spent, we victoriously got that done with you guys as a negative declaration in September. I have been highly clear in terms of where the natural deadline sits with this project. And for always and always, back in September when we did the EAW, there was a flag in the sand that we had to close on the land in January. So working backwards from that, we had the EAW, then it was going to go preliminary final plat, and away we went, and that was all going to happen in and around October. We're now sitting here at the end of the year, and I can only see what I can see on my side, meaning, these guys and, the process. So let's start with, there is a fact. There's a fact that the flag in the sand with me purchasing the land, it is scheduled for a January 8th closing. In order to do that, the lenders and myself, which are investing seven figures in the development, want to have the assurance that there's a development agreement and a plat, meaning that's standard operating procedure. So whenever that is, that's when we want to close. The ideal scenario with the current buy-sell relationship was to have that done January 8th, right? And so everybody's known about the dates, and I've been pushing, and our team has delivered. And I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus. I'll just tell you collectively, between the city team and my team, we've failed to be able to get this in a process that doesn't have you guys coming in on Christmas Eve to try to finish off. The last thing I want, because what I do want to tell you when I get into actually what I wanted to share with you, this is 18 months of my life. This is 18 months of thousands and thousands of hours and hundreds, like north of $500,000, real cash into this project, okay? So the last thing I want to do is just try to force you guys inside of 15 minutes to learn a very substantial project for your city and for us. And always, I know what it's like when you know, if you're forced on a decision, the safest thing is to not do it, right? I mean, that's just a typical. So if we need to do this 3 meetings, I don't care how many it takes, I want to at least be able to, for you to be able to look at me and say, I clearly understand the risks, the rewards, the opportunities, the threats, and be able to make a very educated decision. And I think as you get into the fundamentals of the project, we have gone exceptionally out of our way to bring you what I promised you guys in June 2023. And if you look at the map and what I've done, and I did a comparison so you can look at like how my project and what you and I are all looking at today and how it compares to Dominion Management that was here in November of 2022 and the 2 people before him that were also bringing not great project. So let me say that at a very fundamental level, in Mr. Ellers and I very clearly can provide you spreadsheets beyond. So why you don't have them, I'm sorry, and I'll make sure you have them, right? If we're not comfortable by the end of today, I don't care how many meetings it takes, but please don't, let's not kill the project because you feel you have to do something today you don't, okay? Today, I want to be able to share with you what I believe is the summation of this 18 months, right? And I'd like to address, David, your comment about where this coming out of nowhere and so on and so forth. Not with you guys, but at a staff level, like, let me be really clear. I've never been waving my hand saying that I should go buy a $600,000 traffic light at the corner of Dayton Parkway, 2,000 feet from where my project is, right? This is, at some point we have to recognize that, think about an airport. You have an airport and a runway that's bought and paid for by the metropolitan area, what do you call that, the MAC, and then you have the private sector that flies the planes in and out of there. So just in short, it's to say that I'm not asking for TIF, I'm not bringing affordable housing, and I'm not looking for a handout. Okay, I can fund the private parking lot, the private driveway that we talked about with the, wider the entire building, and I can fund that privately. I have raised 20 million plus in equity for these private developments. I'm not asking you to fund anything private. I'm asking 100% of what is very truthfully public infrastructure. We've done a report, and without getting into a lot of examples, driving up here, I pulled out of my house, I came out of my development. All that road, I should be buying. If I was selling the houses on the left and right, I'd buying that road. But once I came out, I pulled out to what they call it now Maple Grove Parkway, it used to be called Lawndale, right? That's a public road, bought and paid for by all of us, the public, taxpayers. The developer didn't buy that, the city bought it. And it's the same thing here. This is a city road on a $27 million investment that was made called the Dayton, this beautiful interchange that we have. And that in part, guys, also brings you to the issues with land, okay? That land was a sod farm for 50 bloody years, right? What's it worth as a sod farm? It's worth agricultural values. Not your fault, to my fault, as a blessing, $27 million comes in and it's now a brand new interchange. it changes the value of all of that land, which is why Lennar went and bought land and buying land and this, that, and everything. And guess what? The price of that land went up after that approval, okay? So, you know, Gordy is he's a private citizen. He's selling the land, and frankly, he took, a discount selling it compared to, the prior guy, because he recognized, a lot of different things. I think that, and then I spent, X dollars with my bank, and we hired, Nagel, appraisal company Nagel, very well known here, and they went out and did an appraisal, and everything is very in line, as somebody just said, on a, per unit basis, per acre basis. It's definitely more than farmland, but it's still less than, a commensurate, going around in the market. So I don't discount that the value, the total transaction for this acreage is certainly increased compared to what it did 5 years ago when it was agriculture zone and there wasn't a $27 million gig, okay? So this is sort of like the market. So let me just say it this way. The land that we're purchasing, we're not purchasing it at a rip-off price. We're not getting ripped off, you're not getting ripped off, but we're paying FMV, fair market value. It's been tied up by a very respected appraiser. Okay, so we get that. Then the cost of the road, sadly, it is a $5-some million road, and part of that is I have a great company called SM Henches. They do a lot of street work and stuff. Meticulously gone through this. You have to remember that this coming around from Dayton Parkway, most of the money in this project, more than 50% of it, is in just that first part, because the traffic light alone, I think we have a $475, almost $500,000 just for a traffic signal light up at the top. Forget how much the sidewalk and the this and the that. And the reality is, unless we can bring the road to where the right-hand side of parcel number 2, this 52 acres, it's going to sit with an assessed value of $1.8 million. It pays $13,000 a year gross, and you guys end up with $4,500. At the corner, a $27 million infrastructure project. So what we have is a project that's designed to develop substantially more units than Dominium, right? They come in with 420 units, wanted to bring low-income housing and charge 10.5 or 12 some million bucks in TIF. I don't want any of that. Number one, I'm going to be market rate, so everybody's going to have a higher assessed value paying more taxes that generate taxes for you guys. And I've spent 18 months doing what I do, and I'm okay at what I do. Yeah, and we got a beautiful project. Guys, this is 600 units plus, high density, that if you compare it to, like Zach and I talking this morning, 3 units an acre for residential single family, you'd need 200 and some acres worth of land to do what I'm doing in 26 acres. One stoplight, and guess what else happens? Don't forget this, guys and gals. Rooftops, commercial, goes in that order all the time. I worked the last site I told you always about over on Bass Lake Road there. Hy-Vee sat forever and ever. They didn't build, but once you passed, we put up another 400 or 500 units within that 1 mile radius. Boom, building goes up, everything happens. So my 600 units coming into this project, and this little road that, your side, and is 2.8 some million bucks. It's 1.56%. 1.56% relationship between the private sector investment that I bring and the public sector investment of 2.8 million bucks. So, I have this all in a presentation that I don't know if you can bring up, but if I could short that down and just tell you, it works out to, for every dollar that I'm sitting here telling you that we have to put into a road, a public road that has a light that not only goes to my place, meaning parcel 1, it also creates the single road that goes to Shaney, which has, and I've been trying to work with him to buy that land and do more units. It's another 60-80 million bucks worth of project. So 2.8 million bucks, you've got over $200 million worth of value in parcel 3 and parcel 1 from a $2.8 million investment. So just on my part, and I did this a lot, guys, all over the country, economic development, working with cities at a neutral, which reminds me that I told you I was going to wear two hats today. One is telling you the developer that's been at this for 18 years, done a lot of money and put a lot of money in, and I believe greatly in the project. But as an economic developer, let me just tell you that the way this works out, this is $64 to 1, okay? As a public guy, I pay taxes, I own a house, I'm like all of you, and I'm also an investor. And what I'm telling you is, this project is $1 the public puts in, right, which is actually paid for by the taxes that you guys are not collecting right now from a project that doesn't exist, okay? So we're going to take one of the 6 or 8 projects in front of you. There's at least 6 projects, maybe 8, between Shaney and my property. One of them solved in 15 years, not 25, not 26 years like a TIF. 15 years is gone. Now you have 0 basis in 15 years, and that goes by fairly quickly, and that's it. And so it's $1 of public, $64 private. For every dollar that we're investing in this public road, the curb cuts that I pull off of for project 1, project 2, project 3, 4, and 5 up to the top, it works out to about a $64 ratio to 1. So in the end, we came, for quite a while, with what is this going to take? What's the cost of the road? The rest of it I've always handled, and I've told you that 100 times. I need my plats, and I'll go get my money and come in, and we'll go building them. And I've already got a couple of them for the first project, and quite a bit of interest on what you see here as project number 2. But, at the end of the day, I think what you would find is that we might be at some initial, setting some initial precedents, in the sense that, if I could say this delightfully, and as a big fan, Dayton is an up-and-coming, blossoming city, right? It's not like, Columbia Heights. Where's John, right? Columbia Heights, nice city, but it's full, it's built. There's not So the point I'm getting at is, I don't think that you guys have had to present or tackle how do we deal with a fully high-density site that's at the corner of a $27 million interchange that's on I-94. It's different than the rest of Dayton. It's a little pocket down in the bottom left, but, we pack a big punch. By code, you guys have said GMU5. GMU5, what does it mean? He's telling me when I first met, he's like, yeah, but you got to have all this really high density. I'm like, what's that? 12 units an acre. You look at my plans, gentlemen, we're 2 times that, right? So the fees that we're talking about, the taxes that we're talking about, I've designed and invested, and Ben, my architect, we're submitting plans that are doing 2 times the minimum requirement, which means, at the end of all of this, guys, you got net numbers, as Zach alluded. When our companies pay $1 of taxes in property taxes, you, the city, see about 34% of it, or round numbers, about a third. The rest of it is blah 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 blah. So that trickle down of 33%, $750,000. Okay, so now I'm an accredited investor, and I'm telling you, here's your outflow, right? And I've done this in my packet. You'll see it. These are called, I've done a lot of spreadsheets for you guys today. Dennis, you'll see when you're going home or whenever, but the bottom line is the investment that we have in the street ends up at about $2.8 million. And we can cover that through, as I said, that first phase of real estate taxes for 15 years, and the balance is basically just from fees that ordinarily I pay to the city. But when we talk to the city, you guys, I think it's fair to say the private sector can probably get the job done faster, on time, and on budget, cheaper than if you guys had to go build Maple Grove Parkway or Dayton, whatever. You have to go through a lot longer and a much more expensive program. So at the end of the day, we've done everything that we can to trim the thing down, And at the end, you got sort of, again, inflow, outflow. Outflow is $2.8 million day one, matched up with $1.6 million of other outside cash, okay? Now, what does that do? Opens up the project and things are moving. Your inflow, when you look at a cash report, and I can easily do this with Mr. Eller's gentleman tomorrow and, charge you with all this stuff, but at the end of the day, think about it this way. If I said to you as an investor, you're gonna put up $2.8 million and your annual income is $750,000 a year net, that's your 1/3 of the $2 million some odd dollars of property taxes that this project generates. So with $750,000 of income against a $2.8 million basis in investment is something in the neighborhood of a 30% internal rate of return. It's hard to find that in the private sector, much less telling you guys you get to put in a traffic light and build me a bloody road and let me get to work, right? I'll make you all kinds of money, but like, I'm not in the business to do traffic lights. I've been telling Zach that for a long time, and I'm not looking for handouts. I don't want them. But I do want, in a typical scenario of public and private, and Mary is here from Maxfield Research. She's a subject matter expert that you can drill. She works for a huge number of developers, works with cities all over the place, and can share with you some of the precedent. But at the end of the day, I'm here to tell you, I have a project that we can develop north of 600 units. We can deliver close to $750,000 of net money that comes to the city. And I'm asking you guys to do public infrastructure, just build this, that part of it. I'll do 100% of the private. I don't need anything on that, but the road, it is it's public road. It's not like I'm saying pave my interior of my projects as though I was a single home builder. I'm not asking that. I just need the public road because, as you can see, to no fault of these two gentlemen, or probably most of the people in this room, but people preceding us, we got a road coming into somebody else's property on parcel number 3 that you guys, and then your parcel number 2, all of that's wetland, which, I've taken a year of my life away to get this environmental and all this wetland, blah, blah, blah. Because I want to also tell you, parcel number 1, this, gentlemen, that's how many square feet of wetland Michael Elzafan and his design team with Ben, that's how many square feet we're impacting in wetlands, on this property. We would really put a lot of time, with John and Zach's help and Jason too. We got a great project. At the end of the day, it's a great project. But, to tell the developer, to go buy traffic lights up there, it's 800 feet from my property. Like, and it's so, and to say that in a market when you got prime rate at 8, you got construction money guys running around telling me they want 10 and 11%, like, somewhere's got to give, right? The financing alone, just since I started this project, guys, just the banks, juice, right? Juice, what they call juice, what goes into the abyss, like where is it going? The bank is getting it. How much? It's like $80 to $125 a month. So, Matt, tell your girl, your rent's going up $125 this month and every month thereafter because somebody doing something at the Federal Reserve and the interest rates. So we're having a big challenge just getting projects built in this environment, much less having to come in and pick up not quasi-private public, not quasi, this is straight up a traffic light and a right-of-way that gets me access to my property. That's it. Truly, if I wanted a public, all this stuff, I would have told you that a long time ago. I don't. But I've told these guys, I'm not in the business of funding, traffic lights in intersections, that are 1,000 feet from where I am.
So let me help you real quick, because I feel like we're talking in circles now a little bit, and I appreciate everything that you said. So I like the project, and I think I speak for everyone up here when I say the project, if the public finance request was 0, you'd have no problem. The project up here is great. Everyone likes the project. So no one's debating the standing of the project, the quality of the project. Right. And if I'm misspeaking for anyone, just tell me to shut up. Nope. But I think we're on the same page that the project's good.
Yep. Right.
Okay? Yep. So I have a couple questions for Zach. So Zach, the city light that we're talking about that goes in, that's being split amongst all the parcels, that cost, correct? It's not just
Yes.
being put all on the showman?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So that's being split among all the parcels because they're the ones utilizing it, and the traffic that goes in and out of there are the ones that are gonna need to use it. So they need the traffic lights, so those people that live in the apartments can safely get in and out of that road without causing a bunch of accidents and people getting hurt. Fair enough to say?
That's correct. So we
Okay.
utilize the but-for test.
Yep.
If the development was not there, but for, we wouldn't need the traffic light.
Correct.
That is
And that's why we don't have a traffic light there now, is there's no development there.
That's correct.
Development goes in, we need the traffic light.
That's correct.
The other question I have is, the road to get to the east side of parcel 2, what's the approximate cost for that piece?
East side of parcel.
The right side of parcel 2?
So you
Through
mean
the city
through
property.
parcel 3, through parcel 2, and
Yep.
to the east side of parcel 2 and the adjacent to parcel 1. I'd have to look at Jason for that cost because I don't have that number.
Approximate.
It was a little bit more than half, we'll call it less than 3, more than 2 and a half.
Jason, can you?
Yeah, we haven't, I haven't seen any breakdowns of the estimated cost. We haven't done an analysis based on a property basis. So I will say that is the expensive part of it because of the wetland impacts. It's significant impacts in there with a lot of.
So the city is kind of, to get the street to your property, and the light needs to go in, and we can argue who's responsible for the light, the city or the person putting the people there that need the light, right? It could go, in my mind, it could go back and forth, right? And I think where I got to, and keep in mind, we got the email 11 minutes before the city council meeting started, so I'm thinking through this, I'm thinking aloud here because we haven't had any time to think about it. Yeah.
Right.
I can completely see how we give the 2.7 million in fees because that's gonna cover the road and part of the light, if you will, right? That's gonna really cover the road, that's gonna open that up, right? So that part, I can see the city saying, this is my opinion, no one else's, that I could see the city, okay, yeah, I could see why we would forego that. The road is going on our property, you're building it for us. I can get behind that. I can also get behind possibly the fact that that land holds very little financial value. As a matter of fact, that parcel 2 costs the city money, right? Because we pay taxes on it. So I can even get to number 2 on the public finance request. Where I struggle is the newest thing that we got 11 minutes for the meeting, which is number 3.
Yep.
And the reason I struggle with number 3 is because one way or another, the city is subsidizing the development beyond our property. So we've gotten, one could argue, our fair share of the light for our property. We've marked down the price of our property, and we built the road to what is essentially parcel 1. Where I have a hard time is the last one, which is the 2.5 million. And what I hear you saying is the city should become an investor in this project, essentially, and your return's going to be great. You're going to invest this money, you're going to get this great return rate because we're going to unlock all this revenue. That's kind of what I hear you. I'm rephrasing what you said, but you're saying as an investor, this is a great return. So you're asking the city to invest in the property. I am torn on the city's responsibility to be an investor in development.
Right.
And I really struggle with that.
Yeah.
So again, I love, you're fantastic. I love working with you. Staff always says how great you to work with. I love the project. I can see how we got to some of this, but I am struggling, and I'm not looking for you to answer, but I am struggling with number 3 because I have a hard time.
I think that is the struggle.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's with all of
and
this.
because there's going to be, you're going to add how many people living in these? And you're going to have police calls and fire calls down there. They're going to happen. Happens everywhere. They're brand new developments or not. It's not a knock on your development. People that live there, it just happens, right? It's life for people.
100% right.
Those are costs to the city, right? The maintenance of those roads costs the city. All of these things the city is going to endure. And so if we're not getting if we're offsetting that revenue in any way, shape, or form, to me that revenue that we're foregoing would be put into a police officer or some kind of infrastructural support for the extra headcount we're now adding to the city that we now have to grow the city in order to maintain the same level of service throughout.
Yeah.
And so again, I want to give these people a chance to talk, so I'm not the only one talking. So I know you want to respond, but I would let everyone else yeah.
So what I heard you say, at least what I think I heard, is phase 1 will, if we say did a 15-year bond, it would roughly break even.
Yeah, I'm going to go to that slide just so you can see it again.
Okay.
So that's the numbers, and again, I have just an average. Doesn't mean it's exactly that number. It could be up or down by a couple $1,000s. I'm not worried about that.
So it might actually be 20 years then, if we're talking about 2.8. If it's bringing in 200K, well, I shouldn't say that, because obviously it's going to bring in more as values increase. But my point here is that phase one will not quite break even because we will have a couple years where we have no revenue. We will need to support it, as Minn mentioned. And really what I think we're talking about is phase two, phase three, phase four for bringing in the payment, so to speak, the benefit.
You are correct.
And phase two is going to start when?
Soon. Ben and I, hopefully, it's a 2025 break.
Okay, and that's gonna be roughly the same, 200K?
I would say on a conservative level,
Yep.
it would be about the same number of dollars coming into the city of Dayton per year.
So this
Again,
is all the
conservative.
stuff I need to see on a sheet.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about timeline. I don't know that you're gonna get an answer tonight. And we're certainly not looking at, we have no.
I don't think he wants the
We
answer
don't
you
have the
get.
power, nor I don't think we'd want to kill the project.
Right,
So,
amen, yes,
yeah, I, like Matt said, I think all of us, even the planning commission, look at this like a great project.
Yeah.
And again, it's very clear you're a fun person to work with. So, and that sounds like everything's productive, but you have this kink, this 2.8. And I think I personally need more time to chew on it.
Yeah,
But
if it was in, rewind, we can't change that we're here tonight. Let's just say that tonight was a meeting that would have been great if we did like a workshop a month or two ago. And one of the blessings that came out of this morning's meeting that, at least helped me anyway, was we got all of this information, which is the money. And then there's what I'll call the technical stuff he works on that's like, plat stuff, right? Buffer this and square feet that, blah, blah, blah. And they're moving through the process, but it appears that based on, just clipping along, and then I guess you guys have a change thing going on here in early January. The point is, if in fact the final plat and the final plat is what drives everything, because what these guys are teaching me is the development agreement, which is the important thing for us, along with the final plat, as I know, as I've been taught anyway, development agreement comes after a final plat. So my point in saying that is, if the final plat, which is kind of more his stuff, is going to take him into January, then in a way the mixed blessing is, even if it was ready, I would kick the can, because there's no part of me that wants you guys to make a hasty decision and one that's made where you haven't got all of the facts in place from Sunday, right? So we can, proceed forward over these next couple of days and set up. I don't know how you guys want to get it, but I would love to continue the dialogue to share with you, all of what that is. And I think, and then you guys got to still talk out, but catch me going back up now that I'm babble. This stuff regarding, services for the captains over here and all this stuff, to the extent that those things can be understood from a monetization, if you were invoicing them, how much does that invoice? And just say that, look, we've already, if we're break even on this bond, and you guys would have to go into your pocket, we'd have to take on that responsibility to say, keep these calls down because we're paying, we pay for those services.
I could provide that number for you. It's $152,000 a year for one officer in the city of Dayton.
But that's
so you see that $200,000 number there?
Yeah.
That pays for that one officer that we need for the extra patrols
I
out
swear
there.
to God, 2 hours ago, I just hearing the governor, what do you call him? He's putting all kind of money into training.
Yes.
Did you know this? Lots of police officers putting up money to bring them in, pay them salary while they're learning, and then putting them out into the force. So
they're just running for that, aren't they, Paul?
we can go after.
So that's also a full-time.
Understood, yeah. And
And
right, so
please tell me you do not plan on anything near a full-time.
Amen. No, we're
The question I have is,
market
how many units are in phase one?
180.
180.
Yep.
And you figure 2 people per unit?
Yeah,
Roughly, depending on family size, right?
One
Yeah.
and a half, or something like that. I mean,
And how about phase two?
And phase two, probably about double, same.
The same thing.
But this will be, you know, the phase two is gonna be a little bit more family, oriented, 2-3 bedroom, more townhousey.
Are you selling the townhomes or renting them?
No, everything is income producing rental. Yep.
I can provide whatever information the council needs. I was trying to provide an update based on
Yeah.
information that was this morning,
Well, I
which is
think-
basically we need to
yeah.
close on January 8th. I'm trying to get information to
I
the
get
council
it.
as best as possible. I understand it was
I think the important
way
part
late
here is
and
we
a lot
don't
of
need
things,
to
but-
decide this right now. Sounds like.
If the developer's okay with it, except as of this morning, it was, we need to decide that, so that's why, if that's an update from the developer, that's easier for us to all understand, so that I can get you guys more information, because I'm happy to provide
Yes.
it. I only had it since 10 a.m. this morning.
So when would it get decided then? Because the next, I'm gonna say real, because the next one's not.
Next one's in January.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
January 14th, which is after his deadline.
Yep. It would be likely January 28th, because I would not like to put this in front of the brand-new
was gonna
council
say,
on
you
the
got
first
two
meeting
brand new,
after
yep.
not even, again, having no background. I'm happy to have another discussion on January 14th.
Well-
But I don't want to put a final plat of this magnitude on January 14th and say, decide on this on your first meeting of the entire year, or entire career.
We could.
Except we
could have a work session.
We could, yep. I'm
At
happy
least
to have
then
one of
we
those.
could hammer out something like that, and we could have Ellers show up
I
and
think
show
we
us some
need-
graphs and tables.
Ellers probably to help us walk through what are, you know, what do these scenarios look like? Okay, if we get our heads around this number, right, which is what we're struggling with right now, because this is what, you know,
Yeah,
this is
totally get it.
live that we're kind of hearing this. So, you know, for me in particular, I need to see the numbers.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll check your math.
Yeah. Hey,
People
listen,
that
I'm a
have been
fan
around me
with
know
it.
I'm
I'd
going to
love
do
to
that,
give
right?
it to you.
But I need to look at some other, understand what our options are in this. When I say, you know, general obligation bond for $2.5 million, and I'm doing math in my head, which gets dangerous, but that's like 4% on our tax rate. And we sit and argue about $10,000 for half a meeting. So.
He's not
Yeah.
joking, we do.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when it comes to the levy, you know, we're pretty sensitive to that, and I would like to understand, you know, what other options we have in ways to do this. If this is the real number, you know, I need to know what's our best option in terms of doing it, you know, or not doing it, which none of us want to do. Everybody here wants this project. I think that the new council members would be supportive of that. Some of them are in the room tonight, which is great. Some of them. One of them is in the room tonight. Sounding like I'm talking about a crowd, but, you know, but we need a little time to work through this. I certainly do. This is not a decision I'd like to make on the fly, and we are setting some precedents. This is a big project for Dayton, maybe the biggest we've had, you know, unless you count empty warehouse space, but that's a different kind of a.
So, yeah,
Right?
so
And-
in preference of that, the CRG building you're referring to would be technically the biggest project we've ever done. There's a little difference in that one with just obviously the commercial industrial aspect, but we also kind of double utilized that project for having a TIF project that we did the roadway with West French Lake Road, and then also had them put in an extension of Dayton Parkway.
Yeah.
We can't do that with this project because that would be a simple ask that I would say, we could do the same thing here because we did it there.
And-
This we can't do TIF on.
And because it's residential.
Because it's residential, and we can't do economic development on residential. You can only do that in greater Minnesota, so.
You do abatement, you can't.
If you do TIF in a green site that's undeveloped, then you have to be affordable and.
Yep. So, doesn't matter if it's on our side or his side, it has to be then, we would then trigger him, and he doesn't want that anyways, so.
But I think you're gonna
Good-
run
great
into,
point, though.
I think you're gonna run into more issues though, is if we're, you know, in the future as Dayton Parkway gets extended, trying to get developers to pay for that, and what does that look like? So David, I think to your point, there is some
I think your
precedent that will be somewhat accepted in this. Not that we have to follow it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
I think you're right.
Okay. Yeah, I don't, like I said, it almost seems like,
I'm good with more discussion if that's what the council wants, and as long as, so we're all on the same page, I'm good with it. It's fun to me.
Yeah.
Provide as much
We're gonna need
information as the council can swallow, so.
yeah, I guess just trying to schedule something around the two new members.
So we could have a work session. I don't anticipate a lot of things happening on January 14th. There'll be the typical swearing-ins and the typical appointments and everything else, but nothing
Yeah.
major. We could do a work session after their sworn in?
Well, we could have one before.
Oh, and you can have one before, too, before they're sworn in as well. If that's what you want to do, that's fine with me. We can play it by ear if you'd like to, Mayor.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the work, I can even just give you copies if you want for taking home, but I'll connect with Mr. Ellers and get you guys, he has already asked me, project 1, project 2, project 3, sources and uses, how we spent, how much does it cost, and then I did a 15-year pro forma, not 5, 10, 15 for each of these phases, and he can, the good news is I'm a perfectionist, and really with Matt, I'm nuts with it. So you guys can, as deep as you want, you could come in and audit, and I got it. So I'll help you with it, and to all of your points, as I shared with the guys this morning, and I reiterated, I would like to make sure that you guys have a sound set of real solid financial information, like you were sitting shotgun with me, and we're making a decision together on a project that, we got a $2.5 million, risk associated, right, which is the GO thing, but, anyway, I'm happy to give it to you. Whatever questions you have, I welcome it. I'll try to get this to you, if you will, in December. I'm leaving, the schedules, I'm leaving out of town. I'm going on this vacation, starting on the 14th. I know, I don't want to go, but I do. Anyway, I want to go.
So let me save you here. The quick answer is you won't get an answer by the 8th.
Right.
So as long as you're okay with that, then we're good to go. And
yeah, I want to give you stuff before I go away.
Yeah, we're good.
And then
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Is there anything else? Good?
No, I think we're
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you all. Happy day. Very much.
So does this need to be tabled, or what are we doing?
Nope,
There's
just
no
a
action.
discussion.
Yep.
I did not want any, Mayor Council, was not looking for any action tonight. I was just looking for a discussion, if there was a general consensus, what the information was used for, is to be able to put into the development agreement. That's what we're using this discussion for. There was no set approvals tonight.
So, we will stay in touch via updates or something, just so we know.
Yep, I will provide all the information that I get from the developer, and I'll also work with Jason Arsvold, with Ellers, to get all the information that you guys need. I know that we have it already, I just haven't put it together, and I already have all the information. And again, it was not on the same page as the developer was, so I apologize about that. But I will get that all information for you, and then I will plan on we'll tentatively plan for a work session on January 14th, before the council meeting, just to hash this out so we're all together on the same page, and if any information is needed after that, we'll follow up. That way it gives us extra meetings.
If we're doing that, we have to have cake.
Deal.
Why cake?
I need to get something out of my birthday more than just
Oh,
sitting
okay. Happy early birthday, sir.
Wow.
I'll make a special visit just for you, Dave, okay?
Hey, mine's 4 days after that. We could have 2 cakes.
2 cakes. 2 Costco cakes it is.
Costco.
And ice cream.
Yeah.
It's a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Oh, let's not go there.
All right, on to item N.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Before you is the resolution 68, 2024 and 69, 2024, adopting both the final EDA HRA levy and adopting the final city tax levy. I will stand for any questions. I did not have any time to put together any slides today because I was dealing with other items all day today, so I apologize about that. But all the information is in your packet. All of it's back in the TNT meeting. I will certainly go back there so we can go through slides if you'd like to. But I will stand for any questions that you may have.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I got one little comment. It's just a little comment. It's not a super big deal, but where I'm a little bit disappointed in, and I started looking over some of the numbers, and I probably should have caught it 2 weeks ago. The activity center is getting $54,000 more next year than last year, this year.
That's correct.
And I just let it slide and thinking, well, maybe all of a sudden, just because it's on the plan doesn't mean that we're spending it, but all of a sudden it happened that way again. Because we're talking about something here shortly. I just...
What are we referring to?
The activities
The
person
part-time activity center person, yep. We did everything in our power, Councilmember Solonic, to hire that person as part-time. I will tell you that hiring this position has been extremely difficult to find a qualified candidate that is willing to work part-time at 20 hours a week, that doesn't want full-time pay. And so I'll give you a little background. We hired somebody as part-time, had them all slated to go. I received a resignation from them 2 days later based on a family obligation, and have been struggling ever since trying to figure out what the next things we're going to do. We had 2 qualified candidates in the last interview round. The other candidate that I had called back and already said we are picking somebody else, I had to call them back to say, we'd like to select you. And now they said, I won't pick part-time because I can't take that much of a pay cut after I did all the math. So the only way for us to get a qualified candidate was to do part-time with benefits. I will say that that was not the goal of city staff and any of the conversations we had. But the only way to get somebody qualified in here, I can repost, but it doesn't look great for them.
I just do not see, right now, this city's got, I think, not more than 6 events a year. I don't think it's more than that.
I will say.
I could be dead wrong,
I know
but
when we
it's
had-
5 or 6.
When we had Teresa, there was no way she was filling even half her time.
I will say that I will have a discussion with Marty tomorrow based on some conversations that I'm.
So 6 events is 173 hours for each event. There's no way anybody's spending that kind of time on an event. It's not possible. Unless
It
you're
does take
sleeping
time.
for 100 of it.
We also could utilize them towards some of the public works time too, so it's not like it's only gonna be, since this individual's underneath Marty, they're gonna be in the public works department every day anyways. Unlike Teresa, when she was on her own at the activity center every day with no supervision, she was just on her own. This position will be underneath Marty in his office every single day. So we can utilize her in a different resource than just activity center. But I would like the activity center stuff to get improved. And we did put $15,000 extra into supplies for more events next year. That includes at least $5,000 for band work or whatever you want to call it.
You can't buy anything for $5,000.
I said at least $5,000. I don't remember the numbers, but it's $15,000 more in supplies. So it's not just salaries. That's the increase. In that.
Can this person also help get our social media presence? I mean, we've got an
That's the
app
idea.
that never, very rarely ever gets pushed to.
Yep.
I mean, it's,
That
people
would
don't
be
know
the
about
goal.
events. Like, I think it'd be good if we could get this person to do more than just
Yeah, I think that
plan an event, but actually like.
take some of the pressure off Kelsey. She can devote more time to the app and getting it up to where it needs to be. That's
where you're
kind of
getting
the
a
way it
part-time
goes.
person already, though.
Well, we're thinking it's. I haven't had this conversation with
Yeah,
Zach.
this
yet.
has been just because of the fact that I literally called her yesterday and she accepted the job. So this is all very, very new.
Oh,
and
so you're
fresh.
saying there may be some floating.
Correct.
There may be some.
That I can do some floating time between the public works department and activity center department, so that she's not just sitting around doing nothing. She's able to do more than one job and cover more than one base at one time.
Mayor, members of council, I will say, for Holly Dayton alone, between myself, Chief Inga, Amy, and others, it took a lot of time to plan. So
I don't disagree.
one person on just that event alone, you throw in the other things that we're trying to get to, it does take a fair amount of time. Granted, there could be some time with, improving Facebook and that stuff as well, or work with Marty, but from my perspective, it took us a lot of time to pull off Holly Dayton the other night.
So I will say again that was not the goal of staff, but we utilized the resources that we had to be able to make that happen. And I'd rather have somebody qualified in here, that part-time with benefits, than somebody who's not qualified for the job and/or won't make what we think could be a really great position if we take that part-time role. So I'm looking for quality over quantity.
I have one more question for you. You posted the job as part-time, correct?
I did.
Do you think if you reposted the job as part-time with benefits, you get different applicants and maybe even a
Could.
better, not that I don't know anything about this individual. We don't see the applicants, we don't see the resumes, we have no clue. We're just hiring who staff's recommending. But do you, is it worthwhile trying to do that or not?
Well, this other person's already hired.
Well, I guess.
I mean, he just said she's already hired.
We offer the job.
Before we even approve it, she's hired.
Well,
I think she
technically
has
no.
the experience and qualifications that we would get the same applicant in
Okay.
this case. Not saying that we wouldn't get others or might still recommend her, but,
I mean, there's
think
no
it's fair
spreadsheet
for
on what she's
qual.
gonna do for those. Now, all of a sudden, you're gonna go
Do you
to
have a job?
277 hours per
Job
event.
description.
Sure.
And there's
Obviously,
no,
so, yeah.
there's no spreadsheet on what she's gonna do. I mean, here, give me $55,000 and I'll spend it. That's basically what you're asking me to do is, I'm gonna put that number in there and I'll come up and I'll spend it somehow. I understand if Marty can use 7,000 or 8,000 of it and not hire that person he was talking about, I get that, I understand that.
So that would be the goal, likely next year would be, because the idea was not to have them be part-time with benefits, that was not the goal. We put that in the budget based on the fact that we had a previous person in that role that said, we're gonna expand that role. And that was in October when they left. And so it was, okay, well, maybe we can leave that money in there to be able to have extra supplies. Maybe we can do more things next year. Maybe we can do more events. Again, the budget's based on a full department level, not so much on per line. So that might be more money to be able to put towards bands or more towards the bigger events or something.
I'd just like to, sorry, Zach.
You go ahead,
I'd just
yeah.
like to say, when Danielle was here, she would really help with the park commission stuff as well. So it's not all just about planning events. It's, researching stuff for me and putting park commission packets together, getting the minutes and all that stuff sorted out. So it's not just about, putting on events. There's a lot of other background stuff that was going on there as well.
I understand, but Danielle was doing it in 20 hours. Now all of a sudden we're asking for more. And it's the $10,000 and more, the extra 12 hours, it's only $10,000 a year. It's the benefit package that you're throwing at it.
That's the big thing.
That's the big thing. The benefit package is worth more than the money.
I don't disagree, but that was back to our preliminary budget in April, adding benefits to that position. So it's the extra hour, or the new hours and I understand the benefits are commensurate to that, so the cost goes up along with the hours.
Right.
But we did have that in front of us.
There was an initial push
Adding
for it,
benefits to that position, and it's still down from the full-time position that we had with the previous person, even with this.
Well, you mean the 32 with benefits as opposed to 40? Is that what you mean?
Right.
Another question that I have, and this is just a question, I'm looking for the answer. It's on a different subject. The two full-time fire department guys. All of a sudden, we go into this for 6 months, or whatever the number is. Are they on a probation period so that all of a sudden, 8 months from now, Gary's got to say, okay, John and Tim, you guys are gone, we can't keep you? Is that a possibility, or once we have them, are we stuck with them?
I'll have Chief answer and then I can respond.
I guess, Councilman Slug, any clarification? Are we terminating them because we don't have the dollars to support them, or are we terminating them because of poor performance? I guess I'm not understanding the question.
Poor performance, you wouldn't need her. I mean, if that's what happens, that's what happens.
Right.
No, if the program doesn't wash out the way we think it's going to.
Okay, now I better understand what the question is. So like as I said last meeting, true transparency is that the program may or may not work. And what I mean by that is that the full-time people will work out. I mean, we'll have staff to cover those calls. It might be one person, and then we would have to rely on callbacks. But the part that I talk about may not work is if, for the most part that I know, is everyone is interested in the program that's currently within the organization. What I mean by the part that it may not work is if, let's say, over time, and this can happen anywhere, any place, is if people choose to leave the organization because, I don't know, their life changes.
It's up to them.
But they're doing that now. That's not,
Yeah.
we lost
Right.
just
Nothing
the past few
different,
months.
right?
That's nothing different than what's going on now.
No, it isn't anything different. So I do have a plan for that outside of the way it's set up currently. So let's assume that we have staff that leave because whatever the reason is. The next step in that process is we expand the duty crew program to those that live no more than 20 minutes away, like I'm required to live within 20 minutes. And then because we're paying $30 an hour and we're in police fire para, that opens up a whole nother group of people that are probably going to be interested in becoming firefighters for the city of Dayton.
Because the only reason the duty crew doesn't work is if you don't have staff to cover the hours, right?
Correct.
So what you're saying is all of a sudden, something were to happen, like the Otsego Firehouse opens and we lose some people, we need more people, there's options to help expand that.
Yeah, so the next plan is, like I said, open it up to people that don't reside in the city of Dayton. And that's happened in the city of Brooklyn Park, it's happened at Plymouth, it's happened in many places in order to fill those gaps. So that's why being fully transparent, I don't know what people's lives, it should hopefully provide structure for them and give them a little bit more ability to schedule themselves. But then the next step in that is we would open up. The next step after that, if we run out of people, we're looking at full-time firefighters. There's only so many steps in this process before we get there. But that's legitimately kind of how it would all play out.
Well, to clarify, the answer is yes, we can get rid of them. We'd have to replace them with equivalent time to be able to cover the cost, if that's what the case was. But if they're not if they're poor performing, then
Right, then
they're
that's no
gone.
question.
No different than
Right.
every employee has hired here is a 1-year probation period. So they can be terminated for any reason under the sun based on the 1-year probation period. Does that answer your question, or?
I think so, yeah.
I assume you're not asking, Scott, because you plan on just cutting the position halfway through the year as a council, but you're asking because you've got other concerns, correct?
Right, no, I
Okay.
don't,
Just wanna
hopefully
make
it
sure.
works out. I mean, personally, I think it's premature, but I'll roll the ball and give it a shot, I mean, but I'm just saying that I hope we're prepared if it fails.
If it fails,
It's up to you.
there's
You
really
gotta
there's really only two options. It's we have to hire more people,
I was gonna say,
and
decision falls on us.
that would be duty crew model. So you have to expand the duty crew model, and then hire more mercenary firefighters, essentially, which would be people from outside the city, to come in and cover the cost, replace that position, or that would be kind of the couple of steps we have.
Yeah, so Mayor and members of council, Councilman Solonic, that's truly what it is. I mean, there's a step process to get kind of, Councilman Fischont looking for a plan, but ultimately, in my head, I know what the plan is, and because I've lived that plan. Multiple cities go through this. We're very unique in the state of Minnesota where we have more volunteers than we do, or part-time staff, whatever you want to call them, than we do have full-time firefighters. Communities of our size, with the number of calls in other communities in Wisconsin and elsewhere, Iowa, whatever, are full-time. And so that's just a cost that's covered by the expense of the community. But for me to try to minimize that expense for us now is kind of this step process. But again, because we're asking for people's spare time, there isn't any guarantee, if you will. As we continue to increase calls, you'll have it this week for the packet is the call volume for the year. Right now, we're projected to be 606 calls. It's roughly about 9 to 10% year over year. Our call increase. So as that continues to increase, obviously we get more calls. So with a staff station, I can cover more calls and interrupt less people's lives. And hopefully that, and the $30 an hour that we're offering along with police, fire, para, hopefully that is the opportunity to keep the plan, so to speak, a little bit longer over a period of time before I have to come back to council and go, I don't have any options other than we need to move to full-time fire.
I'm pretty much done. Disappointed, but done.
Well, I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. I think our capital equipment jump was too high. The activity person I haven't liked from the start, because there's no way we have enough activity for that person. I don't even think half-time, but, I mean, it would be nice if we could somehow spread that person out.
And does that person know that that's gonna happen?
Not necessarily, but they'll realize that there's not enough. And
It's
currently,
either that or she quits.
well,
Or
there's
it's
currently just not enough work to be able to do that job 32 hours a week. We expanded it. We wanted to expand it, to continue to expand it, but without having any background knowledge, it's kind of just a catch up and go kind of thing. We'd love to have more activities. That's the ultimate goal of community events. But
I'm all for it.
yep, everyone's all for it. It's just how do we plan them? How do we get people involved? And that's going to take time. And the last position had that, and we hope that it would continue to move forward. So,
I mean, I think we made really, I would say we made great strides with
Yep.
Danielle.
Yep.
She did a great job of bringing, the pumpkin thing was great.
Yep.
The holly, all the things that we are now continuing to do are things that she brought forth. So hopefully this new person can take those and expand upon them and find new ways to engage the
That's
community
the
and
goal. Yep.
have more activities. I don't think it's out of the realm if she's got the time to have more activities, and if all of a sudden we can't get more activities in, then if we can split it across Marty, I think it makes sense.
we have other-
Yeah, I get it.
We don't have the facility to have the activity yet.
Right.
Not currently.
We don't.
A facility larger than, you want to have 1,000 people. We don't have a facility for that.
We don't even have one for 500.
No. You got it. Outdoor.
And, while our tax rate is going down a very tiny amount, the average amount that the city is getting from residents is going up.
How do you calculate that?
The tax. Until we hit what I've been calling the legacy tax rate, they will pay more.
So,
If we tax at the capacity increase,
Yep.
the valuation of their homes causes them to write a bigger check, even though we keep the tax rate the same.
Correct, but how can we control the valuation of somebody's home?
We can't, but we can control how much money we take.
yeah.
And that is a function of the rate and the value. Yeah, we can't control the value, but we can control how much money we take.
But can you tell me one thing in your life that has not changed value over the last 2 years?
Well, I guess, leasing's gone down, but I mean, no, I don't disagree, but I just think that I think we can do better. I mean, we had this incident come up with the capacity and suddenly we had 400K we just made disappear. So I think we can work on reducing that number.
Disappear, I think
I think it went to capital items, all of the capital items.
I'm just saying that we can make it happen. And it doesn't take much.
Sure.
And I don't think, we're talking about going up 11.5%. I mean,
Yeah,
telling-
11.24, yep.
Yeah, telling everybody, residents that, hey, we're asking for 9%, that would still seem to be a good jump in expenditures, because their expenditures didn't do that. So I'm just saying that I just want us to stay at that legacy rate for a bit. I agree that at some point you have to say we're done. But I don't think we're there yet. And I'll reiterate this. That whole $30 an hour thing was based on something that turned out to be false. The concept of simply increasing the hour rate for other reasons was never discussed. I don't disagree that the firefighters may deserve a pay raise. However, a 75% increase is a big jump. And if we're going to do it just because, I think we should have had some discussion on real reasons behind that. Because the reason behind that disappeared. So the whole thing just was not very well thought out. And I guess that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Go ahead, David, you were trying. It's not worth it.
I can see it, go ahead.
I'll get my turn. Okay, so I guess it's now. So I want to reground myself on where we are. Because what I see in the numbers, I want to believe, I just want to hear them. So we started this journey, well, I'll start with my own journey on this, was that when we talked about what would we want to see for a budget this year, and the number I floated out with not any structure behind it was, what does a 10% increase in the budget look like? that's where I started. The information we had was that we had, at the time, was that we had a 16% increase in tax capacity. Roughly 14% of that was due to new construction. What I think I'm seeing in the numbers is, even with the adjustment with the fiscal disparities stuff and the, the decreases in the budget that we talked about at the last meeting, well, that doesn't have any impact on this, but that it looks like we have a 16.35% increase in tax capacity as a final number. Is that correct?
I don't think so. It should be 16.63%. Unless I got some updated number and didn't update a number. Is that on the resolution or is that on the memo?
The final tax capacity increase after fiscal disparities?
Yeah.
So after fiscal disparities, it was well below 16.
It should be like 12.
Yeah, yep.
Well, whatever our increase is.
Yeah, well, and those are the numbers that I want to
I don't know
clarify, because I saw 16.35 on here in our packet as the final tax capacity increase.
Oh, I did see.
If I made a clerical error, I may have done a clerical error somewhere, but it should be 16.62%.
Well, that's not the.
Because the fiscal disparity number ended up being an $800,000 reduction in tax capacity, which I can't remember the exact math on it, but you're probably pretty close, Mayor. It's probably like a 3.5-4% adjustment.
Whatever increase we're talking about, it's about that.
Yeah, it's just probably just higher if you take it.
It's the 11.24 number?
11.24 is the tax levy increase.
Oh.
So tax capacity with the adjustment of fiscal disparities out of it, it was 16.63. I would guess it's somewhere between 11.5 and 12%, somewhere in there.
Yep, it's real close because the rate's almost the same.
Yep.
Okay, so we didn't get farther away from it, but the actual budget increase is the 11%.
11.24, yep, that's correct.
Brought down here. And I understand that the fiscal disparities piece was a late curve in the process that, nobody in this room is to blame for. But we have had an awful lot of fun with numbers over the last 8 months. in how we're talking about tax increases versus tax rate. The cost of things are this, they're that. We've got money to recover from a pension fund. No, we don't, and on and on. And so it's been pretty hard to keep up with the cups moving around here on what bucket is what in. I've expressed my concerns about the changes in the fire department being premature enough times that everybody knows where I'm at, and yet we need to approve a budget. And so at some point, somebody's got to give around these things. The process has not been collaborative enough to make me feel very good about it. It's the same proposals we were looking at in April, but the numbers have been moved around. And I think that going forward, I guess is what I'm talking about. I'm kind of feeling like done is done on this year.
Stick a fork in it.
We're at the 11th, 12th hour on this thing, and we need to have a budget for next year. So, I'm on the firefighter thing. I've come around. I said this at the last meeting. I don't like it, but we're going to move ahead, and there is the potential for it to have a community benefit. I think that's got to be quantified for us to find out if this investment is working for us. And so I'd like to see some things, and I know, Chief Hendrickson, you've got these numbers. We've seen a version of this report back in August, but there's some more specific things that I would like to see reporting on an ongoing basis, so we get some feeling of is this working or not. Response times to fires, that seems to be and I'm not in the business, so there's terms in here that are not familiar to me or to the general public. I think when somebody calls 911, the only number that matters to them is how many minutes is it going to be before somebody's at my front door. And there's components to that, components we don't control, but there's a number there that this new model ought to improve. Okay, so I'd like to see that reported on. Time for fires, time to fires, time to EMS responses. Some clarification in even the reporting, and that's probably just the way you query the data. On how we rank things. I went back and looked at the report that the chief sent us back in August, and well, for one thing, the math doesn't work. But past that, it's hard to derive out of some of this. On one graph, it says there were something like 13 fire calls over this period of time. On the next one, it says there's 108. So what are we calling a fire? And let's be consistent about how we're reporting on those things. One of my concerns all through this process has been where are we at on updating or creating a policy and procedure manual for the fire department. I'd like to see that we're making progress on that. Also, as it relates to emergency management, we've talked about that since we talked about bringing on a full-time fire chief. And we need to be making headway on that. It can't be just this new staffing model that we're working on. We have to fill some of these holes that we've had all along. As it relates to the budget in general, I'm really uncomfortable with some of the things we've done in spending money out of a budget that we have not approved. And we did it again tonight with approving a hire at a rate that is not in the current budget. It's in the budget that we're talking about right now. The other thing that I'd really like to see out of the fire department is what is the 5-year plan? We're getting this a page at a time, and that's not going to work for me again. I'm willing to take it on this go around, but I really want to know what our future is with the fire department, with the police department, with public works. I think that we can do a better job with mapping some of these things out on what we expect. We do it with the CIP, and it's never right, but that's every 5-year plan I've ever been around.
Yeah.
Is that you use year 1, you kind of use year 2, and then you revise it. Okay, but there is one, and we don't have that. And those are things that I'd like to see us get better at. And I think the collaboration piece, I want to come back to that, because we've gone around this enough times where it seems like our input should be taken more seriously on some of these things. And by that I mean by way of a revised proposal. We saw the same budget 4 times this summer, the same preliminary budget. In April, in July, again in August-ish. And it was the same budget. Things did not move around in response to some of the feedback that we were giving, and I think that has to be taken more seriously. We're not the experts on most of the things that we deal with, but what we are is the voice of the community, and if we can't understand it, then the people that we represent aren't going to understand it either. So I think we have to do a better job with all of those things and improve our process.
I want to add to that. I think one thing where this full-time thing should be easily quantified is how many on-call hours are we saving? That should within 3 months you should be able to have something on that.
Once we have them hired, yeah.
Oh, no, whenever it starts.
Yeah.
No, I get that, and I'm not saying 3 months.
I will tell you right now, it will not be ready by March or April, because we probably won't even have full-time firefighters by.
Right.
I'm thinking like.
Whatever, no, I mean.
June or May.
Whenever it starts, 3 months later, we should see some savings on hours for paid on-call guys, where that reduces.
And Mayor, members of council, as our calls continue to increase and we have staff station, you'll see that cost savings right there, just because we'll be able to absorb more calls of paid on
We'll
call.
only see it if you get it for us.
If what's that?
We're only gonna see it if you get it.
The chief and I will work on that.
Yeah, so I guess Councilman Pursuant, I guess I'd like to make one comment. And that's this, is that as much as you would like collaboration from us, staff would like collaboration from you. I've said this numerous times since I've been here, and that fact is that it's hard to answer questions when no questions are asked of me. So therefore, thank you for the time that you and I spent a couple months ago trying to go over a few things. You're looking for an emergency management plan? Yep, completely agree. But I've been here for 2.5 years. There was somebody that was before me, and whoever was on council then didn't have any collaboration with them. So I'm trying to dig out of a hole, but what I really need from all of you up there and our 2 new council members is an opportunity to have face-to-face conversation. And I think that only goes for me, but it goes for the 2 gentlemen on my right and my left. Because that's how we're going to be able to come to a better consensus with everyone on the same page so that you understand kind of what we're trying to advocate for. So again, your constituents can understand kind of where we're going or where we're trying to go and what we're trying to alleviate by hiring full-time staff or whatever. But we don't have that opportunity. We had 1 work session in May when I presented my program. And then we had some other conversations, a part of council. But I think the frustrating part for at least me is during a council meeting, I'm only allowed a short time to babble, if you will, as Councilman Charles pointed out one time to me, to try to get my point across. And I'm not trying to babble. I really want you and everyone at council to understand what those needs are and what those reasons are. So my request is that we have more work sessions, or for that matter, I'm not looking for a committee structure, but I've said this before, when I was in Wilmer, we had a Public Works, Public Safety Committee. There's 2 members on that council, or on that committee. We sat down, we had an opportunity to discuss this amongst that committee, and then it was presented to the full council at a later date. So we had more opportunities to have those discussions. I'm all about communication and transparency. I just don't feel that I've been given a fair shot to communicate with you effectively outside of just council meetings. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
So, and this is kind of outside the budget discussion, but we did have a public safety commission, and if, you know, if you guys feel it would be beneficial, I'd be open to.
Mayor, I have no problem with that. I think the problem from before is it wasn't, maybe from what I heard, I wasn't here, maybe wasn't what, I don't know, maybe people had different perceptions of that, but of what that was supposed to be. So I think that would be a collaboration effort of kind of what that committee would look like. And then I did have members of the community that were a part of that as well, so they were constituents of yours to help advertise what we're looking for, at least from the fire department. I just think we need to kind of relook at and redevelop collaboratively between council and Paul and I what that would really look like.
I wonder too if that would help to help us digest some of this stuff.
I believe it would.
100%.
Yeah, Dennis and I were both on the Public Safety Commission when it existed, and I think the problem with it was it lacked a clear charter
Direction.
Yep. The people that were on it weren't sure what we should be working on, and so we didn't accomplish a lot. And you know, I think putting it on hold probably did make sense, but we've more than doubled in size as a community since then. I think that you know, there is a need for it. Now, whether we can get people to volunteer to be on it is another question. But I think there is a legitimate need, and I think that would help with some of the things that you share as concerns with this process. I would certainly support us going down that road. I've mentioned it in the past, and I feel like it has value in a couple of ways. We just have to make sure we define it well so we're not wasting people's time.
I think at a staff level, at a staff level, we've discussed the same thing. Could be great, but we need to have clear guidelines of what you're looking for out of that commission.
And
And I don't know if the last one will as well, so.
Mayors and members of council, I think we're at that point too, as the community continues to grow, so there's lots of discussion around public safety. So like we talk about building a fire station, or what's the 5-year plan for staffing and those things, and why we need certain things. I think that's a huge part of our growing community, the foundation of what I kind of see as how that would move forward, just as a thought process initially, but I think that's a great opportunity to provide more collaboration between staff and council.
I don't know how it was run before, but one thing I heard Gary say was there are multiple people from council on that commission for it to be successful. So I think I don't know how it was structured before, but in my mind, hearing that, it sounds almost more like how the EDA is structured from a staffing perspective. We have some citizens and some city council folks on the commission, not just sitting on the side table quietly, not saying anything, but really being part of the conversation and asking questions, because what I find is oftentimes staff does their best to present things, but we have more background up here of kind of what the impacts of this, that, and the other thing will be. And so if they're actively part of the commission, it would allow them to help provide more context that oftentimes can get lost in the shuffle.
It was just like the park commission. There was 5 people
Yeah.
that weren't, and it was just like the park commission in that they didn't have a very clear charter.
So again, my recommendation, I'm all for it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, I would recommend that you have 1 or 2 city council like the EDA that sit as part of the commission as well to help with that. That'd be I think it's a great idea. My input, having watched the commission's work and how they operate.
Any more? Okay, so what you're looking for is
2 resolutions in front of you on this one.
a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
This is for item N. Matt, motion,
I'll second.
and Travis would be the second. Any more discussion?
Just have one question. So a while back, I brought forth the idea of, we haven't adjusted the pay for the commissions in, I don't know, forever, and they make, not that they're doing it for the pay, but, $300 a year after taxes is barely enough to bring your family out to dinner these days if you have a family of 4. And so we talked about doubling. I think the net impact of the city was like $4,000 or $3,000 or something like that. Is there enough room in the budget to still do that if the council wanted to?
Yep.
Is that something we'd be willing to do as part of this?
Definitely be looking at that stuff.
Especially when you're looking at like planning, I know those
Yeah,
guys
here's all leather.
spend. And the time they spend pre-meeting.
Yep.
They gotta be spending, I'd say probably twice as many hours as they're here. I have no problem looking at that and seeing where we can move that. Because, and you're right, they join because they want to be a part of the community.
But it'd be nice if they could take their family out at least more than once
More
a year
than
for a
once,
nice
yeah,
dinner.
at least more than once,
for their
yeah.
service. I'm not talking
I
about
want to make
buying
sure it's
sports
clear.
cars.
We can adjust the budget, so again, the numbers moving around are no big deal, as long as the main number of the tax levy doesn't move.
Yep. Well, and
You're looking at
Yeah.
20, instead of $25, you want to do $50 for commission meetings, for all commissions.
And the EDA.
That's
Like,
what- for all commissions,
yeah.
Yep.
I just want to be clear.
Yep, all commissions. It'd be EDA, Parks, and Planning.
I just want people to know what they're approving to. That's why I want to
That's
bring it up
that's why
now.
I'm clarifying.
one way or another, you're saying it's about $5,000 for it, or $5,000.
Yeah, because not everyone gets paid either. So you got to remember, some commission members
Some
don't
people
get
just-
paid.
yeah,
They just forego the pay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it
That's
doesn't.
considered
It's not every single person making
Confounds
50.
everything, yeah.
It's
I have no problem
probably
with it.
like $3 or $4 grand.
I have no problem with it.
No, I have no problems with it either.
Okay,
That's the only thing I have.
got a motion, a second, discussion. Okay, all those, board say aye.
Aye.
I guess.
And those opposed, say nay, and that would be me, so 4-1. Passes. Item O, long-term plan.
Yep. Mayor, members of council, acceptance of the 2025 long-term plan. Again, as a preface, I know that we've purchased some things on this plan, so some of these things are not a plan, but this idea would be the 2025 long-term plan, and we'll try to stick to the plan as best as possible. This is not written in stone. Can adjust and amend. I know that some things have been purchased off this based on a projection that we have. This is correct. The idea is that we try to save as much money as possible. We're going to buy it anyways. What's the point of waiting? I know that I can speak to Marty's items. A 5% increase in next year doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to pay it. We know we're going to need them. But I will stand for any questions that are happening with the 2025 long-term plan.
Any?
Doesn't matter.
Okay,
It really doesn't matter.
I will look for a motion in a second then.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
4-1. Okay, we are now closed session. Are we all set for this?
Well, I don't have the closed session thing we gotta read or whatever, so.
Yep.
I don't
You
have.
have you have one other.
I just
item.
have,
Did
where,
you?
wa-
Oh, she put it on, oh.
I've got-
Amy said you put it on the agenda?
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
yeah, it's not nearly as long as the last.
Fantastic, because I didn't do that. Sorry.
Amy did the rescue, look at that.
Oh, wonderful.
Got it.
Well, he switches everything over. Do we have 2 minutes for a bio break or not?
Yeah, we
Do
can
you
do
need to
that.
read your thing before?
You need to read your thing before you go into the closed session.
Don't we have one more thing before that hiring thing?
I already think that's in consent.
That was in
agenda.
the consent,
Consent
Was it
agenda.
really?
so we approved that.
You voted for it, Scott.
Okay, so
You did, 5-0.
you're saying just this, Amy, this,
I just got it
Yeah.
today. How can it be in the?
so I'm just saying that the one I had
Consent,
last time.
regular
was-
items.
Okay,
I'm gonna take myself out of that.
we will, and we need a motion to go into this, right?
Do you want to amend your?
I'll
Uh,
motion if you need a motion.
Motion to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D03 for labor negotiation strategy purposes. Sweet.
I'll motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
against. Discussion, I don't think there is action on it. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say
Scott
no.
says nay just because he doesn't like me tonight. I don't know.
Motion passes. Okay.
I'm gonna take a bathroom break.
So if there are no objections, will we adjourn?
Good.
And we are.
One comment all night, on recording, of course.